You're in control. You don't do stress. You've enough other things to get on with. You know your sport and you know the odds, so you're not afraid to choose alternatives. That's why you bet with QuinnBet, featuring live streaming of Irish and UK horse and greyhound racing. So here's to real choice. Here's to the real punters. And real punters choose QuinnBet. QuinnBet on mobile, app and desktop. We bet you'll love it. Register today at quinnbet.com.
The Aer Lingus College Football Classic is back. Georgia Tech and Florida State University touch down in Dublin on Saturday, August 24th at the Aviva Stadium. Enjoy the full American football experience with cheerleaders, marching bands, tailgating, pep rallies, as well as an exciting halftime show. Don't miss out on one of the biggest sporting events of the summer. Tickets on sale now at Ticketmaster.ie.
For everything to go right on the day, takes hours and hours of dedication by an entire team. The early morning starts, the hard-working stable hands, the trainers, instinct, drive, passion, the fearless jockeys, and last but by no means least, a bit of good luck on the day. QuinnBet, proud sponsors of UK and Irish racing.
Welcome to the Irish NFL Show's Draft Night Live in association with our partners QuinnBet and the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. It's finally here, Draft 2024. It's taken place in Detroit. Throngs of people on the streets of Detroit. There must be about 150,000 people there by the looks of the pictures here. We're watching it along with you, of course, on the Irish NFL Show. Shane Brennan is here, Noel Dowling is here, Brian O'Leary and myself, Conor Brophy, and we'll be here right with you all the way through the first round from picks 1, where we expect the Bears to take Caleb Williams, right the way through to pick 32, where the Kansas City Chiefs will be on the clock. Or will it be the Chiefs? Because you never know when there's going to be a trade. You will hear our trade alert when we have that situation happening. Oh. And we'll bring you that news and instant reaction on point all the way through the draft. So stay with us for that. It's obviously taken place in Detroit, but we decided to set up our own draft room here in the swanky penthouse of the Clayton Hotel, Laps Quay in Cork City. We couldn't have the people in the draft rooms across the states waiting to hear their draft cards pulled out, have all the fun. So we decided we'd decamp to Cork and go on the road and take the Irish NFL Show to the Great to have you along with us, and I'm sure you're watching on NFL Game Pass or Sky Sports and DAZN or wherever you are. Keep us along with you, and we'll keep you company right the way through the night. Plenty of Red Bull or coffee or tea or whatever your beverage of choice is to get you through from now till 5ish a.m. We won't think about that too much right now, but that's just to throw it out there. In terms of our own teams, we've got Shane, Patriots fan, Noel, like myself, a Bears fan, and Brian, a Giants fan. What do you expect and what are you hoping for your own team? Never mind what you think they're going to do. What are you hoping for? We'll start with you, Shane.
I'm probably going to go with the bad answer. I really hope the Patriots just be boring, because the Patriots have just a great history of finding some way to trade out or to be dramatic. And even all this talk today about the fact that they're possibly still open to trading the 3rd overall pick, there are still other teams and suitors trying to get up there to maybe hop up to get Drake May, Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy. The Patriots, for God's sake, you're in a position now where they're the 3rd overall pick, because that is what you earned. You earned it by being the 3rd worst team in football. That is just the way the last couple of seasons have gone. Be boring, stay there, and pick whoever the Commanders or whoever does end up taking the 2nd overall pick doesn't choose out of Jaden Daniels and Drake May. Take that person and find a way to build with them. That's what I hope the Patriots do, but unfortunately, the more I go on today, I woke up this morning and I thought, you know what, the fact that the Patriots haven't traded so far today, I'm feeling a bit more confident. But as the day has gone on and as we've chatted as we travelled down here to Cork, I started to realise that maybe there's a situation where if the Commanders pick one of Jaden Daniels or Drake May, and it's the person that the Patriots did want to end up picking, that they will trade out of 3 if it means that they don't get lumbered with the person they don't want. So that's going to be a really interesting thing to see. Once we pass the 2nd overall pick, that's when the drama will start. That's when the trades will start. I hope it doesn't start with the Patriots, but I'm afraid that it might.
And it's funny because that's pretty much what Steve Wyche was telling myself and Brian when we spoke to him during the week from NFL Network, that really 2 is where it could get very, very interesting. And if that pick goes the way that people don't expect, if it does turn out that the Commanders go for someone other than Jaden Daniels, if they go for Drake May, for instance, then we don't know exactly what the Patriots are going to do. It's a lot of flip-flopping. I see Marshall Mathers, Eminem himself, just walking out onto the stage in Detroit. Let's give him his props. It's unbelievable watching the crowd there. I'm sure everybody's looking a lot. The amount of people here, it really does. I mean, if we can sidetrack it just for a moment, lads, taking the draft on the road was, I know they kind of fell into it, the NFL, as you were saying earlier, Noel, but it's been a really great decision. Like a city like Detroit that's not in the market for a Super Bowl right now, obviously, you know, like a lot of other cities, if they're not domes, if they're not in the right place, this is just as big an event, or not quite as big an event, but just as big a celebration of football and the opportunity for people to get out, particularly after the kind of season that Detroit had last year. It's going to be in Green Bay next year, and I expect they'll want to even top this.
Absolutely. You know, as you say, it's just great for the fans around the country to be able to go and enjoy this. We've just had a shot at the crowd, and it looks like an amazing crowd and an amazing atmosphere in there today. And something like this, I know Radio City, you know, was a great little kind of tradition. But for, as I say, for football fans around the country to have the ability to go and to get this kind of festival atmosphere, to see people like Eminem, and we see Jared Goff going out there now. It's just great for fans. In a way, it can make it feel a bit more inclusive for everyone around the country,
exactly
rather than just sticking it in one place.
It feels big, it feels inclusive, It feels like everybody's joining the party.
Because we know how they do it at the NFL. It will get bigger and bigger as they do it. And why not? You know, being a football fan is supposed to be fun, and not just on the field, but everything that comes with that. So if you're able to enjoy times like this, well, that's brilliant for fans.
Sorry, but even on the point of international fans like ourselves, or like many people watching on, if they see this and we're trying to explain to people why we love the NFL so much, we're like, this is what we come up with the biggest off-season event. It is the razzmatazz. It's the show business. This is one of the reasons why we love the sport. And again, obviously Radio City was something, but there's still much of a case of a bunch of GMs in a stuffy room. This is Hollywood in Detroit, obviously.
I gotta say, I love this, Noel, as well. And you know, obviously the Lions are a divisional rival of the Bears, and for the most part, we don't wish them well. And yet, like every Bears fan, pretty much every fan of any other team in the NFL got behind the Lions last year. It was a fantastic journey that they had. I think people really love Dan Campbell, and they love the attitude of this team. You can see how they're getting the crowd hyped there. People roaring their approval of Jared Goff and Aiden Hutchinson and the other guys on the stage there. When a city gets behind a team, it's exciting. That's exactly what the Bears are hoping for from this draft, if the whole Caleb pick turns out right. But as we saw with the plans during the week for that massive new $5 billion stadium in Chicago, if that ever takes off, and good luck taxpayers of Illinois paying half the bill for that one. There's a lot riding on this from a Bears point of view. What do you hope happens from this draft?
Well, look, as you say, when it comes to the first round or the number one pick, there's no climax to that. We know what's happening. We know that Caleb Williams is going to be that number one pick, and what we're just hoping for as Bears fans is that the Bears finally end that hoodoo when it comes to the franchise quarterback. There's a couple of times recently we thought maybe we'd got it, and just for whatever reason, it kind of didn't turn out the way we wanted. Now the Bears have put a situation in place for a young quarterback to come in. We have wide receivers, new tight end, we have new running back, and it feels like they have molded this team to be ready for a young, exciting quarterback to come in. We have the new offensive coordinator. We hope these guys are going to be able to work with Caleb Williams and he's going to fulfill the dream we've had for a long, long time. Then when it comes obviously to the number 9 pick, obviously the Bears are lucky to have two picks in the 10 in what looks like a really strong top of the draft. I'm just looking for a player who can be productive. Even if the Bears do end up maybe dropping back a few spots, I don't want them to go too far, because when you have the number 1 pick and the number 9 pick, you really
sorry to interrupt you there, Noel, but the Bears are now officially on the clock. The Commissioner, Roger Goodell, has just announced the time ticking down there on that 10 minutes. Probably take them off about 6 seconds. But Brian, just before we get that number 1 overall pick and the formality is concluded from a Chicago point of view.
They're not trading out, no?
When you talk about exciting young quarterback and Chicago being primed for it, could we see the Giants go for an exciting young quarterback? Is that what you think? Is that what you hope?
Such a mixed opinion with all Giants fans. We even had it last night on the show. Kieran was on from the States. He's a Giants fan as well. He is convinced that Joe Shane will navigate a way to get up to the third or fourth pick. To me, it doesn't look like it's going to materialise with the Patriots and May, with the Cardinals, potentially even the Chargers. But I'm probably in a different group who don't think we should go for the quarterback. I know people are going to say Daniel Jones is not the answer. I don't think it's a case of Daniel Jones being the answer or not. I think it's a case of, if we bring in a quarterback here, and if, in my opinion, at some stage next season he will have to play, who's going to throw the ball to? Because the likelihood is Darren Waller is talking about retiring. He's got his own situation going off the field. He's got enough going on, and we don't really have a marquee wide receiver there. And it's been quite some time since the Giants have had a really bona fide number 1 receiver. You could probably go back to Odell Beckham from his LSU, and as an LSU receiver in Malik Neighbours that everyone has touted potentially is even better than Harrison Jr. So I would go wide receiver. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think as the day's gone on and we look at some of it, like Shane is discussing certain things he watched around the Patriots, and he's relieved that they haven't traded out, but it seems as the day has gone on that JJ McCarthy is the likely pick for the Giants. A lot of stuff yesterday on the Rich Eisen, so the confidence in his interview that he is going to the Giants. He spoke very positive about his time there, and of all the teams, and we're talking about the Vikings being up there for JJ McCarthy, of all the teams, the Giants are the ones who've done their most homework on him. For me, it strikes me as if he's there, they'll take him, but I do prefer a receiver.
All right, let me throw something else out there. Receivers, as you mentioned, Brian, very much after the strong quarterback class that we've all been talking about for the last couple of months, and indeed for most of the last season. In the background, as your team falls out of contention, as all of ours managed to do very early last season, it was immediately on to who are they going to pick, and is there going to be a quarterback available for that draft pick? Very strong wide receiver class, but what intrigues you the most in terms of what you expect teams to do in the first round? Let's just throw that one out there. Outside of your own team, of course, what's the storyline that you're really looking for? Because I think probably what's going to happen, what everybody expects to happen, is some teams are going to really reach here. They're going to really... We just saw that contract concluded. We saw A.J. Brown's contract extension in Philadelphia. $96 million deal. Like, you're talking $25 million a year for a top tier wide receiver now. So if you can pick one of those guys up in the draft, it makes a massive difference to your roster construction.
In terms of the team that intrigues me the most, I would lean Cardinals, and I know it's probably an obvious one because people have suggested the draft starts with the Cardinals because it looks like in all likelihood we're going to have a quarterback going off 1, 2 and 3, but let's bear in mind they have a second round pick. They've got a second first round pick at 27. They've the Texans pick from the move last year. And we're talking about the Vikings coming up into the top 10 and potentially taking a quarterback. Like, do the Vikings, by all accounts, if you're looking at what the terms would have to be, they're going to ultimately have to give up that 11 and the 23rd pick. And then you're into a situation, if it is the Cardinals, you've got 11, 23, 27. You've got something in the region of, you've got 11 picks in this draft. They could do a lot of damage in this draft.
Yeah, you just teed me up there because there's 3 teams with 11 picks: the Cardinals, the Packers, and the Rams. An awful lot of draft capital. which intrigues me. At the opposite end of the scale, like we've just talked about the Bears, who are obviously on the clock right now, and they pick again at 9, as Noel mentioned, 2 picks in the top 10, but they've only got 2 picks the whole rest of the way in the draft. I mean, there are more holes than 2 to fill in Chicago outside of the quarterback and whoever they decide to take at 9. So that's where we might see some speculation around maybe trading out. But other teams with significant draft capital, and you figure that's going to fuel some interesting moves as the night goes on. I think the record for picks, I was looking this up before I came in, was the Vikings in 2020 had 15 draft picks they amassed in the end, still hoovering up players in the 4th round. They were wondering, should they take 1 punter or 2? By that stage, they'd so many picks.
I think they'd want trains in that instance. You don't want to be signing 15 rookies to contracts, because ultimately you're not going to be playing a lot of them throughout the course of the season. How many players by and large will go in and really be productive from day one, especially the guys in the later rounds. So you do get the odd player, but by and large, those guys are not going to be productive from day one.
Other storylines you guys are intrigued by, Noel and Shane?
For me, it's go ahead. Well, for me, it's the Vikings. Brian touched on it there. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about.
I threw that ball into double coverage.
there we go. But as Brian was saying, obviously the Vikings, there's a lot of talk they may move up. I mean, I look at the fact that they chose not to go with Kirk Cousins. They let him go, which then puts them in kind of not a desperate situation, but in an important situation to go out and get that replacement quarterback to come in. I know they've Sam Darnold there, but you really don't want to be relying on him. And I think similar to the Bears, I think the Vikings have put in a really good kind of surrounding team there for a young quarterback to come into. They've built up obviously the draft picks in 11 and 23, as Brian mentioned. So for me, I want to see how high they can go, because I'm fairly well convinced they want to jump up. In my head, I have maybe the Patriots or the Chargers are the teams they may kind of target to get up there. And then who are they going for? They're obviously getting really, really linked with JJ McCarthy now. So that as well is going to be interesting. That feeds into the whole quarterback question of who goes where. So for me, the Vikings are a team to keep an eye on. Plus, obviously being in the Bears division, it's something that has that kind of interest.
For me, I think the Los Angeles Rams are a very interesting case, because we were saying earlier that they've had tremendous success not only in being able to develop players and being able to find absolute gold mines in the later rounds of the draft. They are sitting here with 11 draft picks. I think they have 4 in the 6th round, 2 in the 3rd round. They're sitting somewhere in the middle of the draft here as well.
The pick is in.
The pick is in. Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, Shane.
No
Drum
worries.
roll, please. I don't think it's going to be necessary. Bears fans in the crowd there in Detroit, still in full voice, still hollering. They're in enemy territory there. Probably need an escort out of there if they get too carried away.
Yeah, just while it's happening, I just want to comment out there are 2 great traditions that you really know the NFL draft is on. A, the clock is on, and B, the commissioner gets a hell of a booing. That's just, it seems to get stronger every single year. You gotta love it sometimes.
And we'll see what kind of hug Caleb gives him. Will he go for the high hug, the low hug? Will it be a kind of a limp affair, or will it be more of a tight embrace? Obviously, that's something that everybody watches is the commissioner hug as the night goes on.
Just wanted to touch on some comments. See, Declan is back. He's suggesting about Barry Sanders. Keith has given us the word the pick is in. We're very much aware the pick is in, but it's great to see so many comments coming in early doors, and Eminem and the commission. Obviously, Keith has mentioned that. Rory Fitzgerald was also in touch, so it's great already to see so many comments coming in. People are obviously doing the late night indulgence and staying up for the entirety, hopefully. No,
fair play. I hope people have cleared their schedules for tomorrow morning or taken the day off. We really do appreciate people staying up to be with us. Obviously, you're staying up to watch the draft, but it's great to have you on board here as well, and to keep the messages coming in. We'll have plenty more to comment on as the night goes ahead. Here's the commissioner coming to the dais.
There we go.
Shocker.
It is official.
It may be the only shock of the night.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I just want to. I just want to, I guess, comment on this now, because obviously you're Bears fans, and I know there was a large debate in the sort of Bears fan community beforehand as to whether they would stick with Justin Fields or whether they would go with the Caleb option. But I think, this pick and the debate around it and everything will be analysed, it will be criticised. He has a bad game in the first half of the year. People will be saying, oh, it was a bad mistake, he's got attitudinal problems, whatever. So we will have plenty of time to talk about this in hindsight. But now, in the moment, I think it's important to recognise that I think the Chicago Bears made the right decision with this call. Between, I guess, the league's evaluation of what Justin Fields can do, plus the talent that Caleb Williams has and is bringing to the table, I think this is definitely worth the risk. And you can see he's just after giving the commissioner the hug there, is ecstatic, I think is the word to say, for joining the Chicago Bears. He's going to the biggest one-team market in the country. He's now their new star. I think he's quite happy.
As you say, and look, we can be cynical about how there was no drama in this, and we've kind of hammed that up as everybody has, or we always knew this was going to happen from weeks out. But seeing the joy in his face, it's a life-changing moment, and this could either be the start of a magical journey, or, as you say, Shane, it's the start of a pressure cooker, really, because he goes into a 7-10 team. It's an unusual situation, Noel, for the number 1 overall pick to be in. He's not going into a broken franchise that has holes all over the place and where he's going to have to hold it down. He's not going to have to sit behind an established starter. Yes, he goes in and he's expected to play straight away. Bears have put some weapons around him. They put a situation in place that, frankly, they didn't have for Justin Fields, and which greatly hampered Fields' development, whatever you view what he did in Chicago over his 38 games since then. And I think Shane quite rightly calls out the fact that none of the other 31 front officers or coaches in the NFL thought Justin Fields was a starter, and so they ended up where they ended up, and they pretty much made the right decision, in my view, as well. But it's an interesting journey for Caleb, to be honest. Kieran was calling out the other night as well. He goes in there with $10 million or so in NIL money that he's earned while he's in college. He's not in the same situation as a typical quarterback is, for multiple reasons. Things need to happen for him quickly, and that is a lot of pressure on a young guy's shoulders.
It is, but I think the benefit to that is he has that $10 million, so he's essentially being a pro already, because he's been earning that kind of money. So sometimes you wonder, when a player is going to go from college to suddenly hit the NFL and get all these riches, is he going to change? Will he still have that desire? Well, Caleb Williams clearly has that desire. He's been making the money already in college, but there's something different about him. He has a drive. I know people can say it's arrogance or cockiness, but for me, it's just a confidence. He wants to be the best, but when he talks about...
He's bawling crying here,
but doesn't this...
It's a very emotional moment.
Absolutely, but you compare this to the stories previously of, he doesn't want to play for the Bears, he's going to hold out from the Bears, but look, I mean, this is not a player who looks like he's unhappy with the choice that's just being made.
I'm not objective, obviously, and Brian, maybe you'll temper my enthusiasm here, but Chicago is a great landing spot. I mean, people, and I get this from Packers fans all the time, and then they never fail to mention it. I even saw it come across the tape on the NFL Network a little bit earlier. Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer. They've never had a quarterback throw for more than 30 touchdown passes. But that makes this a great landing spot, because if you're that guy, the whole city is behind you, and they'll be building a statue to Caleb Williams outside Hallis Hall if he lights it up in the way everybody or most people hope and expect that he will.
Yeah, and I think it kind of falls into why they made the decision to do the Fields trade when they did. And there was conversations even on the show, and was the right thing to hold on to him and see, not necessarily have a battle between them. Maybe you can hold forwards tonight or tomorrow and get a deal, but ultimately, you want everybody to be re-energized with what's ahead. You want a new quarterback coming in, a quarterback with the caliber of this guy, and he can go into a team, which touched on during the season. How many games for the Bears nearly won? They nearly got over the line in particular games. Rightly or wrongly, some of them were on Justin Fields, some of them were on the defense, some of them were on the coaching earlier on in the season, which you kind of criticise at times. But ultimately, they're a good team, and they feel like they're a couple of wins away from being in the playoffs, and this quarterback could be the guy that puts them over the edge here. And it will be very interesting to see what they do at 9 if it is a wide receiver going in, because we spoke about it on our 10-1 preview last night. Do they double down and give him another receiver? They've already brought in Keenan Allen. They have DJ Moore. They've got so many tools. You bring in DeAndre Swift. The Bears are primed. They're primed now. For a lot of Bears fans, I don't want to over-egg in terms of the expectations going into this season, but it is a very competitive NFC North all of a sudden. A couple of years ago, it was the Packers and everyone else was chasing their tail. Now you're talking about the Lions in championship game, Packers rebounding all the playoffs, the Vikings are making a push for a new quarterback, and then we've got the Bears with the first pick. It's going to be a great division next year. Sorry,
just a quick one on Caleb Williams before we move on to the Washington pick, which, as we're looking here, is 3 minutes from... They've got 3 minutes left on the clock. We have to remember last season that Justin Fields did not have a good start to the year. And that has to be the difference that Caleb Williams needs to make this season. There needs to be a feel that he is good from the start. Justin Fields, I think my first appearance in the Irish NFL show, I was talking about how Justin Fields is just a human highlight reel. But he was making sort of bad decisions, and he wasn't quite sure whether the team was around him. And then you come into the start of last season, and in trying to be too creative and trying to do too much, he made too many mistakes. Caleb Williams is a fantastically creative player. You can tell he's a passionate man by the way he's there. He's obviously quite happy to come into the setup, but there needs to be after that welcome to the NFL moment, there needs to be, within the first 4 games, the feeling that he is solid and able to move forward. Because if the Bears start 1-3 and have to try and build into the rest of the season, it could become a little bit more difficult.
Shane, I hung up my Newshounds cap, so I'm going to hand you a few potential headlines here as the young buck, the up-and-coming journalist here. It'll either be Caleb Williams or Caleb Williams.
Oh, wow.
Based on what he's done with the manicure as well, it could be Caleb Williams.
Oh, my God.
Keep an eye on all of those.
That's coming to...
The hits just keep coming.
That's coming to the Sunday World.
We've now lost half our viewers.
He drove down on his own. He was thinking too much today.
He was just there
far too much time to think on the way down.
I can't wait till we get on picture because Ben Costello has just sent a message in. I assume it's directed to Shane. Is Shane dreading the pick 3? You've already alluded to.
I'm not dreading pick 3 because we're picking a quarterback at that 3, and that's all that's going to happen. So I'm not dreading pick 3.
Commander's pick is in, by the way, at 2, and this, as Steve Weiss was saying, Brian, is kind of where a lot of fun could start to happen depending on which way the Commanders go. Jayden Daniels, the presumptive second pick here, the Heisman Trophy winner from this year, Caleb Williams, Heisman Trophy last year. Have 2 Heisman Trophy winners ever gone first and second in the draft? I must check on that one. We get the research department to check on that one.
This pick is probably coming in a little bit quicker than the Caleb one. I would love to see what the number was. Here comes the commissioner.
It's definitely confident that Washington were confident in who they were picking, but I'm afraid now that there are a lot of people on the phone as to their decisions are based on what Washington do here. So this is important.
Jayden Daniels it is.
I think as expected, well, somewhat as expected, that Jayden Daniels goes to the Commanders.
I'm checking the mock drafts now, Brian. Who's already out of the race?
Noel is out. Noel is already on. Noel, I think he had valid points. He had valid points. That's the way he thought Drake May might be the option. I thought we spoke about the Commanders, and we in detail over the course of the last week in particular, sideline conversations about whether they were in on Jayden Daniels. We had the piece, and Steve Weiss explained that they seemed to have, whatever concerns there was, they buried the hatchet very quickly over the course over the fact that they brought in 4 quarterbacks on the day in which he visited. But ultimately, I think over the course of the last week in particular, it's kind of come to fruition what we all thought, which is ultimately what Jayden Daniels would be the second pick. And it'll be interesting to see this Commanders team under Dan Quinn and obviously we touched on last night. He's going to have Cliff Kingsbury as his coordinator.
Let's talk Jayden first of all, Noel, before we talk about the work that the Commanders are going to do from here. And they have 6 picks in the top 100, we shouldn't forget here, 9 picks overall. So they can do quite a lot to improve on where they were last season. They cleaned house a little bit. Montez Sweat, obviously, among the more prominent exits going to the Bears. Chase Young to the 49ers, already out of that building. Jayden Daniels, in the plus column, he lit it up last year. And if you're looking for a narrative to follow as a Commanders fan, you're looking at Joe Burrow, the last guy at LSU who did what Jayden Daniels had done. Heisman Trophy winner, had weapons of wide receivers, just like Joe had Jamar. Jayden Daniels obviously had Malik Neighbors and he had Brian Thomas Jr. and he made them work and has got himself the number 2 overall pick now to the Commanders. In the con column, potentially, he's a very slight young fella. Looks like he'd get folded in 2 now if the wrong pass rusher gets to him too early in his career. And that it is a concern, though, joking aside. They've seen this movie play out with RG3.
Well, no, that's actually spot on. When you talk in recent history for the Commanders, that is something to think about. He is probably going to need to bulk on a little bit more kind of muscle in there. But again, you don't want too much because he is a dual threat quarterback and you don't want to impact his running game. But I mean, he is a very talented player. He is a player who can, he can make the throws. He probably doesn't have the strongest arm, but he has an arm that's more than good enough. And then he obviously has other.
I'm just laughing in the chat now as we look at Jayden Daniels doing his interview with the sunglasses on. He's giving us something to watch. He says anyone wearing sunglasses ain't making it, so he's already writing up Jayden Daniels. I'm just trying to remember, was Caleb Williams wearing sunglasses?
I don't think he was. We'll have to go through it like the past few years. Who's wearing sunglasses, who wasn't.
Absolutely, could be a new way to judge. Yeah.
Alicia thinks we're an after timer. No, we're conscious that Sky are around 20 seconds ahead of us. We are watching through Game Pass subscription this evening. So yeah, we did do our timings today. 20 seconds behind. Don't ruin it for everybody now.
Yeah, exactly. You're watching the match live, and we're the live score. You know what I mean? It's coming on. I think so. Just on Jayden Daniels, you were mentioning, I guess, question marks over his weight. or how bulky he is. I think the fact that he's agile is what makes him different. I mean, you have to remember as well that one of the big problems with the Commanders last year is the fact that they were just not very good at really containing the pass rush. And I'm not quite sure whether they'll be able to really fix that in one season. I know they've got good draft capital. They have a decent amount of cap room to work with, but he needs to be able to get away from the guys running at him. And I think that that's something which is a positive for Jayden Daniels. So I don't know. I think that this is a pretty good pick. And look, if we base it on the second overall pick last year, that maybe because he's not getting as many headlines, that he could actually have more time to breathe. This is about whether the Commanders as an organization can really build around him in a proper way.
And we know, in fairness, Dan Quinn has already gone to work in free agency, brought in Nick Allegretti, who did brilliantly last year in that Super Bowl run for the Chiefs, and Sean particularly in the AFC Championship game. Tyler Biadasz has come in there as well as a centre, and we know there's plenty of offensive linemen available who, depending on what's going to happen here in the next few picks. And I know Daniel Jeremiah was saying earlier that he expected a run on O-linemen and expected some movement around the board and some trades to happen around some O-linemen. We do know it's a pretty
sorry, pick is in. The New England Patriots have picked. Is that right? Am I seeing that? Am I seeing that correctly?
So Shane will either be on the way back to Carlo in the next 5 minutes.
Here we go.
If it is JJ McCarthy, I'm jumping in the River Lee. That is
another Michigan quarterback to the Patriots.
Another Michigan quarterback and another person who is a reigning college champion. It is a dumb idea, but I have faith in the Patriots organization to pick Drake May, do the boring, sensible thing. Which
Robert Kraft is on the phone there.
Can I make a quick comment before we do get into the Patriots and Jayden Daniels? I'm going to throw this out there. Kind of strikes me as another type of Justin Fields, doesn't it? You look at his coverage, you look at his play, and it's just they were showing a lot of coverage there of him escaping pockets and making 25-yard dashes.
Who is this? Jayden Daniels.
Very Justin Fields like.
Yeah, well, it's amazing. He did lead the country in rushing yards last year, like over 1,100 rushing yards for a quarterback. But again, that's the kind of thing which you can do in college football, because if you break from the pass rush, if they go for a blitz and you find a way to break it, you're gone. And that's one of the things that Colin was kind of arguing against the skill of Jayden Daniels, basically saying, oh look, he's a 23-year-old who's just outpacing all of these 19 and 20-year-olds trying to get him. When he gets into the NFL, someone's going to cut him down. And time will tell as to how that happens.
We've seen that happen time and time again. You see college quarterbacks, particularly as you say, the dual threat guys, escape the pocket and they get smoked.
So as we were watching, Roger Goodell is being booed on.
Spoiler, Shane.
How are we feeling, Shane?
I know the pick.
Oh, thank God.
The draft has been saved for Shane.
I'm quite pleased, because it is it's the boring, but it's a sensible decision. All this talk around, I mean, even Gerard Mayo at the start of this period was basically saying, success is built from taking what you have, trading back, and bulking up on draft picks later in the round. That was the Patriot way under Bill Belichick. I think this is a statement from the Patriots now that this is not Bill Belichick's Patriots anymore, because if Belichick had this draft pick, we would be picking JJ McCarthy at 6 or Michael Penix Jr. later on in the first round. He wouldn't be sticking at 3. So I think it is a statement of intent. It really is a massive job now for the coaching team to try and give him a positive workspace. And I think Gerard Mayo as a head coach is the right person to do that, but I'm not quite sure about the rest of the staff. What I do like about Drake May, though, I mean, he's the
a lot of people I talk to about Drake May and his draft narrative has been interesting, because there was a certain point of time in which a lot of people said there wasn't much to separate Caleb Williams and Drake May, and then Jayden Daniels started getting buzz, and other quarterbacks started getting buzz. We're hearing a lot of talk about Michael Penix draft stock rising, particularly in the last week, and Drake May kind of fell out of the picture a little bit, and it's hard to know how much of that is scouts and evaluators making their decisions, and hard to know whose agents and representatives are the best at blowing smoke.
Well, that's the thing. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut across it there, Brian, but I think that's when you're seeing people in action, and we have to remember the fact that Drake May was the first, I think, player in the Football Bowl subdivision to get over 4,000 passing yards and 500 rushing yards. Since Kyler Murray in 2018, he's had quite a a stellar season in terms of overall performance, but we don't know how these guys are reacting with coaches when they're coming to the combine, when they're doing interviews, because that's when we've seen the stocks of JJ McCarthy and Jayden Daniels rise.
And that's also to that point, and Noel, I heard Daniel Jeremiah talking about this, the difficulty from a scouting perspective in evaluating these guys. He was saying is, if you're comparing Jayden Daniels with Drake May, it's a classic example of the one that he gave. You have to account for what one guy has, and you have to subtract that from the other guy. You're going, yeah, Jayden Daniels looks amazing, but look who he's thrown the ball to. Drake May didn't have that. And similar story with Caleb Williams. When he had it, he performed at a massively high level. Wasn't quite as good than the next season, but a lot of the reason why he's gone number one overall is what he was able to compensate for and the creativity and on the off-platform stuff that really excited scouts.
Yeah, look, it's not an exact science for these guys. And as you say, each player has it differently, whatever setups are in. It's the same when you draft somebody. You could draft somebody who turns out to be a bust, but had the team before or after drafted him, he could have gone on to be a superstar. There's a lot of factors that go into these guys.
Let's not relitigate the Mitch Trubisky trade up.
No. We don't say that.
We're all leaving.
But for me, with Drake May, I really liked his pick. I actually liked him better than Daniels. I thought Daniels would be a better quarterback in the short term from next year, but I thought over time Drake May could develop. Now, for me, with him going to the Patriots, they don't have much of an O-line and they don't have any receivers. So I think they need to be careful with this young player. I know they have Jacoby Brissett, who I actually like as a kind of a bridge quarterback to give Drake May that bit of time, because there's no need to rush him. Because we've seen it with Mitchell Trubisky, even with Justin Fields to an extent. If you break them early, they're generally broke. So if he can take time to come in,
Darnold.
well, absolutely. If Jacoby Brissett can go in and steer the ship for a while, he's an experienced pro, someone great for Drake May to learn from, and then just don't rush him because there's no need.
The Alex Smith in Kansas City
absolutely,
model.
Perfect.
But just on, I think that is what is being talked about, because the Patriots have the most amount of cap space available. They're sitting on 54 million in cap space that they're not using, and they don't seem to be in a rush to use it. And I think I think they're trying to figure out what they have.
Apparently, you don't have to pay one of the worst rosters in the NFL very much. It's what we've learned from that.
Well, hell surprise, but I think it is the case that they're just allowing him the time to, I guess, see what we have here before we start picking the guys that will build up. So I think the Patriots fans, which is kind of difficult and very impatient Boston, but Patriots fans just need to wait it out this year and look for positives. And
I'm getting excited here because the Cardinals pick is in, and I'm excited for that, but I'm also excited because so far it's going exactly how I predicted it. There's been no trade so far.
I was just about to say, you were chirping at the end of the season because you won the picks comp, and right now your mock draft is on fire, so we might be retiring you after pick 10 the way things
But that's it. Where are all these trades we've heard about? I'm already getting anxious for them. I think I'm on the edge of the seat just for these trades I've been hearing about.
And I was going to make a quick comment because there's a lot of great content coming in on the messages there in front of us, and Declan Garman suggesting he's going to have a successful career. He's not wearing any glasses, but what he was wearing was a pair of runners with suits, and
we had that discussion today. Actually,
that's an absolute no. So there we go. So, but anyway,
he's wearing sneakers.
The absolute models of sartorial elegance here behind the desk. We're well placed to comment.
They're quarterback sneakers, that's what he's trying to pull out.
Came on to listen to talk about runners and suits, but unfortunately that is the case. Where we are in terms of the pick is in. We all thought maybe they would trade out. You would expect a wide receiver.
You really would.
For your fourth pick for Arizona coming up here.
Yeah,
Marvin Harrison Jr.
I think everyone had that one.
So far, so predicted. Interesting.
Okay, Kyler Murray's delighted that the Cardinals haven't traded out and he has someone to throw to now. I mean, and in the big season that he's coming back, the Cardinals are coming against, into a very tough division with a probably beatable Seahawks, to be fair.
I mean, this is exactly the right move, in fairness to the Cardinals. If you are back in Kyler, give him a weapon, give him the best available, and that's pretty much what they've done according to all the evaluations.
It's the right moves if the Vikings didn't call and give them great options. The Vikings are sitting on 11 and 23, I think, and they could have easily gotten a good wide receiver. But I think I do think there are positives in sitting on this pick and picking Marvin Harrison Jr. He is the best guy out there. And I guess sometimes if you believe that Kyler Murray is the best guy for the Cardinals, you pick the best guy to go around him.
Well, for a lot of people, though, a lot of people,
we know Jonathan Gannon.
A lot of people believe he's the best player in the draft, not just wide receiver. If you have a big hole at wide receiver, you have a young quarterback who you need to give weapons to, and you have Marvin Harrison Jr. there, who a lot of people think is the best player. It's, you make
no-brainer.
that move. Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. I don't want to get too far ahead now. Obviously, Chargers are on the clock, and Chargers have also been touted as a team that could potentially move. And Harbour seemed very kind of relaxed in his recent press conference whether they would make that move and trade down. And ultimately, this is where we all thought the Vikings would come into play here. And, if it wasn't 4, certainly 5 had to be under consideration.
I think that there has to be a part of the Chargers that's annoyed now that Marvin Harrison Jr. has gone in 4. Surely there was a part of them sitting back saying, we want someone to trade up and take JJ McCarthy at 4 so we get Marvin Harrison Jr. for ourselves.
This could all go very pro forma according to the mock drafts very quickly, but I think then that's going to make the picks outside of the top 10 much more interesting, because I think whatever trades we don't see here, the ripple effects are going to start to be felt later on, because you're going to see, I would imagine, Roma Dunze doesn't look like he's going to fall to the Bears the way things are going right now. If you see Malik Neighbours and Roma Dunze go over the next 2 picks, unless the Giants make a move up for JJ McCarthy, not so sure that's going to happen now.
The way things are going at the moment, okay, we're still awaiting the news that whether the Chargers are selecting, but if the Chargers are to select, you would suggest they might go offensive line and Joe Walter, or maybe they go a different route in terms of who they believe is the better offensive line guy in the draft. But that then leaves the Giants in a situation where they can make that decision to take the quarterback, or they go with arguably 2 wide receivers and a Dunze and Malik Neighbours. They probably didn't expect to have an opportunity to pick one of the 2 of the best wide receivers.
And if the Giants do go QB at 6, then if they don't have to trade for it, then one of the other receivers falls, and that gets interesting in and of itself. Does somebody then make a jump up because it's not quite as much of a reach? Does he fall to the Falcons? Does he fall to the Bears? Let's see.
I think we also have to start asking ourselves, at what point will the first defensive player go off the board? I think most of mock drafts, and mine has them going at 8 for the Atlanta Falcons, but we're not quite sure what the Titans are going to do with their pick, where they're going to sit on it at 7. Obviously, we're waiting for the Chargers and presumably the Giants go afterwards, but this is a very offense-heavy front load of the draft. So I think that is something to keep an eye out on, whether people are making moves.
It's a really good point, because you have teams sitting here and the Ravens are a team that we haven't really talked about much at all in the run-up to this draft. Top in offensive and defensive DVOA. They were top in special teams DVOA last year. On paper, in the regular season at least, the best team in the NFL. Not a huge amount of holes to fill. Wide receiver probably an obvious one, but this is a team that we know drafts and develops defensive players for fun. And they're going to have, their pick of off-ball linebackers, their pick of defensive players probably later on in the draft. The way this thing is going, they may get a nice choice at where are they picking? 30.
Yeah, that's a serious push to come up from 30. You would have thought.
Yeah.
Sorry,
just on here, I'm seeing that the Chargers have 4 minutes left in the draft. This is the moment now where if you're a fan of a team where you feel that your guys want to be aggressive, your guys want to be all in, let's say, as some people might say out in Dallas, this is the moments now where you want your guys heading up. If you're a Buffalo Bills fan, if you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, even if I guess there are a few teams like that, these picks, maybe not the Giants at 6, but the Chargers at 5, the Titans at 7,
yeah.
And even the Jets at 10. Those are the kind of picks that you can say, okay, we can gather up some resources and try to go for a player, try to go for somebody, especially if your club is in a position where you have the players where you could realistically win a Super Bowl the next 2 or 3 years.
But where do the Bills one is interesting for me though, because how do you get from 28 to where you're going to be able to make a strike for one of those players? Is the thing I wonder about.
That's
simple.
a big jump. Yeah.
Trade a great player that you have, so then you can try and clear off your your massive cap hit, which they're still trying to deal with. I mean, they've already gotten rid of
Diggs.
They've already gotten rid of Stephon Diggs and Tre'Davious White as well.
Yeah, Gabe Davis went to free agent to the Jags. So
yeah, I mean,
2 marquee wide receivers.
Like, they have Josh Allen. They have momentum after last season. The Bills are a team which could realistically be in the Super Bowl. They need to find a way to beat the Chiefs and to outlast a Bengals that will have Joe Burrow coming back. They need to find some way to get up here. I don't know how they do it, but if they're not trying, then we're not quite sure whether either they're overconfident in their coaching staff to try and build up draft picks in later rounds, or whether they just don't have the ambition or the capability to really say, we want to win now with these young guys.
I'm very conscious here as I'm looking at Owen and Sue, our AV Supremos here, who've done an amazing job to set everything up in the penthouse here in the Clayton Laps Key in Cork City. Chargers fans, and we haven't given the Chargers much love here, and they are on the clock with just over 2 minutes to go. Presumably they're going wide receiver here, unless they let the clock tick down, so we're getting marginally excited that maybe they're fielding trade offers as we speak to kick this party off.
I think they're giving themselves every opportunity to get a trade deal. I think over the course of the last 3, we've seen them at this stage the pickers come in. They're allowing the clock to tick down, which makes you think. You're suggesting other teams that where are the Broncos here? The Broncos are talking about over the course of the last 3-4 weeks in various different press conferences and media outlets that they're going to make a push to come up. I would have thought this is where they have to hit the ground running, and obviously maybe if they don't,
unless they're in love with a Bo Nix or someone that they think might actually be available to them at 12.
You have to remember, the Chargers. I mean, there are 2 teams in their division that desperately need to move up for a quarterback, being the Broncos and the Raiders. I don't know whether the Chargers are going to let them do it. So,
true.
I think they should be really on the phone to Minnesota, or Minnesota's in.
There we go.
Oh, the pick is in. Chargers are picking.
I think they're going to go O-line here. I think they're going to go with the safe pick, which is to put security blanket.
I think they go wide
keep
receiver.
my picks alive. That's what they're going to do.
No, but when you look at what they've lost in terms of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, they're 2 big holes there.
Gerald Everett.
And exactly, Everett as well. So, I mean, you want to make sure you have top-class pass catchers there for Justin Herbert. So I think they probably go wide receiver. But O-line is definitely a position they could go as well.
I'm going to go out now in the name of Joe Alt is the pick. But again,
well, Harbaugh likes his big boys. Joe Alt could be the man.
Well, it could be, because they talk about how deep this class is in terms of wide receivers. So maybe they think they can find someone a bit later on and go O-line now.
I think he could just be chaotic and really just go for JJ McCarthy just to annoy everybody else.
Just get a bit of carnage.
He can still have his golden godchild.
And then they trade Justin Herbert to the Vikings, which our Chargers fans are already frowning at the corner.
That didn't go down well.
Brian may need a police escort.
That means the Giants are on the clock.
It's a very calm draft room, isn't it?
We're just hearing we can hear the commentary.
It is in Los Angeles, to be fair. They probably all did yoga beforehand, so maybe they're all just feeling very zen right now.
I'm interested. We can hear some of the commentary coming through, and Rich Eisen
there's more fans at the draft than you actually see in SoFi.
Yeah, and just as much of a mix of different teams as you see in SoFi as well. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
For Rams games, obviously. That's obviously what we're trying to say.
It's a precarious one, because generally we were kind of in limbo here. Like, obviously the first few we were very much aware, and then when it hit 4 and the Cardinals weren't going to trade out, it was obviously going to go receiver, and in particular was the one in which they took Harrison Jr. But here, this can go many ways.
Yeah.
And I say that, okay, if it is a wide receiver, is it Dunze, is it Neighbours? It's no guarantee which one it's going to be.
Or is it one of the other guys?
Here we go.
Here's the commission.
As we're watching, Roger Goodell is trundling on stage,
taking his time in this one.
Trundle is the word for it. It needs a bit more pep in the step.
He's quite slow. I think he's feeling more tired than we are, and it's a regular time in Detroit. Joe Alt.
Brian.
Damn it, Brian, you were right.
From Brian and 9.
Yeah.
That's Joe Alt from Notre Dame, who played in Dublin? Question mark.
Not to be many Chargers fans.
He was here for the Aer Lingus College Football Classic last year.
There we go. I think that is the. We'll have to see now. So last year when Skronsky went, I think was it? What's the Skronsky go 5 overall as well? The Northwestern player who played in the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. You could see that the picture that they used was from the game in Dublin. So if there's anybody being picked from Notre Dame, keep an eye out in the back to see if you can. Maybe you might see a glimpse of yourself in the background. You're on NFL Network for 30 seconds. I don't know whether this pick is inspired by Harbaugh's, I guess, sort of run first mentality, which is kind of unusual considering the personnel changes being made and the fact that their best player is quite clearly a throwing quarterback. The fact that they've gone with the center the offensive lineman who seems to have gotten his sort of earned his trade and is quite good at being an O-lineman in the run game.
But I wonder what then Justin Herbert is thinking now and where they go, because they're very bereft, to your point, of weapons. You wonder what the Harbaugh plan here is.
Stick it up to jumper, is that it? I mean, surely not.
I just think over the course of the last 2 years, Justin Herbert's been injured time and time again. And he's carried on in certain games when he shouldn't have been in there. And he's picked up injuries, and it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's damaged his career today, but it's kind of slowed him down slightly. Like I don't think anybody disagrees. He's one of the one of the most enjoyable and exciting quarterbacks to watch in the league. But to get the best out of him, ultimately that's what Harbaugh wants next season. He has to put the right people around, which is why I thought he'd go with a safe option. Like, we wait months for this, and Chargers fans and various other teams, you know, you're looking for the snazzy player, but ultimately sometimes the right player is the boring pick, and Chargers fans might think this is the boring pick, but in 2 years' time they'll probably be recognising it as probably one of the best picks in
taking the best O lineman on the board generally tends to work out pretty well. High offensive lineman picks, you know, I know it's not exciting, as you say, but they generally tend to work out. Yeah. These are the guys that get rolled over to the second contract that, you know, become your reliables, that become your Trent Williams or whoever.
Me and Noel spoke about this one today because over the course of the last week, there's been suggestions that Joe Alt wouldn't be the first offensive line guy to go off the board, and for weeks on end he was like marquee, nobody was coming near him. And then all of a sudden over the course of the last couple of days it's kind of changed, but we just got a conversation today to avoid the noise. It's Joe Alt all the way, and he kind of it's recognising the fact that he's the 5th pick in the draft.
Well, talking about the receivers there, I mean, we know Greg Roman does like to run the ball, so maybe he had a bit of an input into, you know, solidifying that line, so, you know, they can have that security there.
The Giants now have their pick of wide receivers if that's the way they want to go.
How are we feeling, Brian?
Yep.
Neighbours?
I didn't think it would turn out this way where they'd have the pick of Adunze on Neighbours, and here, like Ian Rappaport, obviously the pick is in.
New York Giants pick is in.
I think,
but I just wonder in what way the loss of Saquon Barkley is affecting how they make the decision. Do they need to find another offensive weapon in the first round? Because obviously the running back market or the running back position is not a first round position. But do they then try to make up for it by getting the top wide receiver who can get, particularly somebody who's good on yards after catch, try to coach him into the Daniel Jones system, or do they go for JJ McCarthy? Well, I think it's a very interesting pick.
If you look at what Daboll did in Buffalo, you know, the biggest part of Josh Allen's development was Stephon Diggs.
Yeah.
You know, people forget because of the way it ended, the way it started. When Stephon Diggs came, it was amazing, and that unlocked Josh Allen in a big way.
Sometimes you give a quarterback a marquee player and it just Plus, if the Giants want to win now, I mean, do you want to bring in a JJ McCarthy who maybe won't be ready to play, whereas you can bring in a number one wide receiver to help Daniel Jones and push this team on and the offense on now?
A number one wide receiver for Daniel Jones to throw the ball over his head. And
I also just think politically for the general manager Joe Schoen that he spent so much time backing Daniel Jones. He spent so much time saying, you know, he's our guy. So if you're going to back him, why get a quarterback in and potentially create a quarterback controversy when you can give him somebody to work with? Now, I'm saying this kind of beforehand with Roger Goodell's coming on now.
I think it's hard to turn down one of these two receivers who are left.
Here we go.
He's walking even more slowly with each successive pick. He's really drawn out the drama.
Because the teams are picking too quickly. He has to slow it down a bit.
He's dying for number 2, is he? Malik Neighbors, wide receiver, LSU.
Everybody needs good neighbors.
Sunglasses. He's got the sunglasses. That's gone. I'm sorry, Brian.
We have to make a note to just check this, as you said, Shane. In a year's time, we got to go back and just see was actually right.
If we do a review next week, I'll try to do like a historical record.
The Sunglass Index, we'll call it.
We had a conversation with our own WhatsApp group about a week and a half ago, which Colin was alluding to the Giants taking a quarterback, and I was consistent then, and I was consistent as we opened the show. Despite the need for a quarterback, I think the right thing to do was get a really strong, productive wide receiver. Noel touched on it there. These guys are listen to Albert Breer last week. He's suggesting these 3 wide receivers are going to be immediate impact players from day one, and that's what you probably are getting here.
Are the Titans fielding trade inquiries now? You have to think that they will.
You would think so.
Joe Alt is gone. They can get an O-lineman probably down a couple more picks. People will clamour in now maybe to get Rome Odunze.
Every mock draft surrounding the Tennessee Titans has said, well, they need to get an offensive lineman. That's fair enough. You can do that later on in the round. I actually think that
now's the time for the trade with the Broncos or the Raiders.
I think somebody, never mind quarterback. I think somebody who needs Dallas Turner or a defensive quarterback edge rusher is in the market to try and rush to try and outpace Atlanta, because if the Atlanta Falcons pick at 8, they're picking Dallas Turner, so it was the first defensive player taken the draft. So I think that there has to be somebody there who's saying, do you know what, we actually could do with him more than we need an offensive player, more than we need to move up for a wide receiver or quarterback. So I think that the Titans are probably talking about it, or maybe even consider it themselves, that if they are picking If they are picking 7, they are probably going to stick with an offensive lineman. But
Brian Daboll looking trim enough there in the New York Giants draft room. His off-season regime. Now that he's no longer sharing pizzas with Wing Martindale, he's obviously able to trim up a little bit. He's leaned out.
It was certainly a pressurised end to the season in terms of, I suppose the team didn't give up on him, but obviously there was a lot of factors in the background, obviously, which was established and we all read about at the end of the season. But certainly seems like things are freshening up. And
I wonder if Tommy DeVito's mother has put him on a good diet plan. Stick with the pasta and the cutlets, he'd be fine.
There's one thing I'd say about this, but whether he's a success or not, ultimately it comes down to whether the Giants season is successful there for Shane and David, because we did have the conversation of if they were to take a quarterback, you could potentially buy yourself another year. You can have a difficult season, go to the owner and say, look, we have a new quarterback and an opportunity to develop him. You got to give it a little bit more time. But with that not being the case now, it feels like a bit of a winner bust type of season now for these guys.
Yeah. What's your fashionista take on this? Is lining his pictures of his time at LSU? Is that a yes or a no? Do we like that?
Well, he's got the swag, isn't he?
Yeah, I got to give him that. You got the nice chains.
I've completely changed my mind. I like guys with glasses. I like that the New York pin is in the background.
They should all wear glasses.
Yeah, but it
is interesting as Brian touches on there that they're rolling with a quarterback who wasn't their pick and building the offense around him, building the infrastructure around him.
Just on it, can they not just say, look, we were honest when we were talking about Daniel Jones, we're sticking by him because that's a situation we have, and we didn't make the pick to save our own jobs. We made the pick because that's what we thought was right. Surely that has to cut some credit, because if we're sitting here saying, picking quarterbacks saves you in your job for an extra year, I mean, the ownership of the Giants are cotton onto that as well.
I think there's also a scenario later on, depending where Michael Penix Jr. go and Bo Nix. Like I believe generally one of them will go maybe late, and it could be a trade up. I wouldn't be opposed or surprised with the Giants trying to make a trade up later on. I think we've got a wide receiver now, and now we can focus on the quarterback situation. It doesn't necessarily have to be a quarterback in the first round.
I think we are. We'll be turning our attention to the Tennessee Titans. I'm not quite sure how long they have left on the clock or how many phone calls they are trying to fend off.
Good bit down there now, but it is an interesting pick. They could go wide receiver. That wouldn't necessarily be a bad selection, considering what they've got in their wide receiver room. Obviously, they made a couple of big additions in free agency with Calvin Ridley coming in. They signed L'Jarius Sneed.
Pick is in. Tennessee Titans have made their pick, so there's no trade here either.
Noel's mock draft last night had an offensive line, and there wasn't Joe Alt here because of the scenario in which Joe Alt goes before him. I think maybe that's the scenario that could be in play. I had Fashanu here, but you kind of look now and you wonder, is maybe Rome Odunze the best player on their board after, say, we all expected Joe Alt? Yeah. So are they kind of looking at Odunze? Because again, you've got a young quarterback. You really want to find out if he's the guy. So he can never have enough good weapons to really give him that leg up to try and succeed. So it'll be interesting here now to see which way the Titans actually go.
And then if Falcons are taking Dallas Turner off the board, as everybody expects them to do, Odunze could yet end up falling to the Bears at 9.
Well, you're nice. Rubbing your hands.
Yeah. Will the Vikings get JJ McCarthy at 11 without even having to move up after all the talk for weeks on end? So I think
JJ McCarthy is actually slipping despite all of the talk that he might possibly be a top 3 pick. Who knew that all of this talk before the draft? Sometimes inflates.
Will Levis scenario from last year, Connor? I think that's about the only thing I got right was the JJ McCarthy overhype wasn't going to deliver in the way people were saying. When it comes towards the build up to the draft, you just, as it gets closer, you kind of take every story with a pinch of salt as it comes in.
Checking as we go through this as well, the players who are in the room, one or two of whom might be starting to get a little bit nervous. So who's actually in the green room in Dallas? Caleb Williams, obviously, Rome Odunze.
Please cut to JJ McCarthy.
Turner, Brian Thomas, Darius Robinson, Quinion Mitchell, Terrion Arnold, JC Latham, Leatu Latu.
Leighton could be an interesting show here, but maybe a bit early for him. But you never know. He's a good player.
I think it's Olu Fashanu.
Yeah, despite Rome wasn't built in a day, and he's on the board. I'm still convinced they go offensive line because they've spoke so highly of Will Levis in the off season. The owner talking about him. Whether we believe that he's really the guy, the long-term answer there, they believe it very much, so they're very convincing in their argument. They have to sit there again, similar to Justin Herbert. They got to put someone around, give him a security.
In fairness, their selection to pick Peter Skoronski last year at guard, I think, worked out really well. So it makes sense to basically apply that apply that template, but just on a tackle instead.
Interesting comment from Declan Fornall coming back in. John Tyreek Hill drafted 165th pick in the 5th round, 2016 draft. So we've seen it this season with the Rams as well. Wide receivers further down the board doesn't necessarily.
Yeah, no, that's it. Myself and Connor were talking about that earlier on, like how, you know, the wide receivers taken at the very top of the draft generally kind of hit more often than not. But then you have that bit of a gap where it's really hit or miss. And then, you know, down 3rd, 4th, 5th round, you get a lot of players who develop into these kind of Tyreek Hill type players or Puka Nacua. So, I mean, it's, again, like the quarterback, there's no exact science to this. It's
and like the quarterback, it's about situation as well. You're taking a guy straight out of college, putting him in a pro-style offense, telling him you're the ex-receiver, particularly if you come into a team that's devoid of weapons. You'd much rather come in, like, look what the Packers have done. Look at the teams who've been able to develop players that they select further down the draft. They're not coming in and saying, you're the WR1.
Go win it now,
Well, I think that shows the importance of coaching. It's why coaches earn their money. Because so many players, I mean, even, it's not to bang on about it, like Mac Jones, put him into a situation where there's competent coaching and he's not a backup in Jacksonville this year. And it's the same. I mean, I have to kind of have a bit of sympathy from the players' point of view, because they all have teams they want to go to and teams that they probably don't want to go to as well. And you know, I think if a wide receiver were to come into Tennessee, I don't think the ownership has been particularly competent in how they've handled their coach situation after getting rid of Mike Vrabel. You know, if you are a skills set player, I don't know if you want to go to Tennessee and whether that affects how you perform. So
here we go now.
Maybe Tennessee kind of know that from their own research and decide, you know, we're just going to go with someone to protect Will Levis and prove that we can do things with the kid we already have.
It's back to what's the right thing to do for the team in the long term, as opposed to taking the snazzier player.
Right, we are
safe route.
We are awaiting the pick.
JC Latham.
JC Latham. Ooh,
interesting.
Slightly, it is a tackle, so it is an offensive lineman, but it's slightly unexpected. Nobody had us picking JC Latham.
Well, I did mention it about 3 minutes ago, so I'm going to pretend that was my pick.
Yeah, we just put a sidebar.
This is the Howie Roseman school of general management. Take the guy from the SEC, take the guy from Alabama who plays in the trenches. These guys historically have been plug and play.
And this now, but this excites me now. We see where the Falcons go, and Rome Odunze could be there at 9, which would be great to see. But it is going to be interesting to see now. Do the Falcons go defense as everyone has predicted, or do they see Rome Odunze there and say we can really get this offense going?
I mean, the big problem in Atlanta is the fact that they are 32nd in the pass rush rate.
Yeah.
They have to fix that now. Yeah. I think the big question for them is which pass rusher they go for. They basically have a choice between Dallas Turner and Jared Verse. It's two different characteristics. You either have Dallas Turner, who is the quick kind of quarterback hunter, but he doesn't quite shed his blocking as much as some of the other top guys. Or they're going to go with Jared Verse, who is someone who will get to the quarterback more often, but might be a little bit slower. I think in his 40-yard dash, he was a little bit slower than Dallas Turner was.
So it really is. Though.
He is very powerful. So there are two good options.
It's not just a 40 as well. Like with Dallas Turner, it's the way he turns the corner. He's very, very aptly named. An element of nominative determinism there.
But it's also important as well that the Falcons are changing to a 3-4 system. They need to have guys who are efficient in the pass rush. So I don't think that anybody in Atlanta is sitting here thinking, oh, we might go for a wide receiver. They have other ways to get him.
Daniel Jeremiah on the money saying that we're going to see the O-lineman go in the top 10.
Just two things. I want to shout out to QuinnBet, because that was one of their enhanced prices today, that Jason Latham would go in the top 10. So hopefully some people got on that and got the better price from QuinnBet. But interesting, we spoke over the course of the last week around the Jets and what they would do at 10, and we're going to leapfrogging the Bears at 9. But I still think that's an interesting dynamic. I always felt the Falcons would be open to a trade out, and I even felt that even more having done the interview with yourself, Conor, with Steve Weiss from NFL Network on Monday evening. He said, I lean defense. It seems to be the general consensus. You know, Shane's alluded to there, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were to trade out, because they could potentially go to 10 to 11, not drop too deep, and still get a defensive player. So is this the time? Is this time for the trade? Someone comes up, someone's getting a little bit nervous, whether it's the Odunze factor or whether it's the quarterback in terms of trying to get in for J.J. McCarthy. I mean, where are the Broncos sitting here? Where are the Raiders right now?
There's a lot of good defensive prospects knocking around here now. You got Byron Murphy. If you're looking at the premium positions, like nobody's talking cornerback. You got Terrion Arnold still knocking down there. You know, he's been predicted in just outside outside the top 10 range. But if that's what you're thinking, if you need a defensive back, and most teams in the NFL do, why not?
Interesting, Trevor Slattery. We spoke about it last week on the show when we were doing this 20 down to 11, Conor, and we talked about the Saints, and you were saying an intriguing pick for the Saints, and I said if Brock Bowers was to fall to 14, when he's kind of desperately hoping that is the case because Derek Carr didn't have the most fruitful season, and we said, you know what, someone like a Brock Bowers going into New Orleans could arguably be the player that kind of reignites that offense, and he's hoping that he does fall. Be interested to see what the Jets
and
do.
you've no Michael Thomas anymore, so
Absolutely,
a lot of it falling on Olave's shoulders.
Yeah.
There's still a question here, guys, as to what do the quarterback needy teams do now? Because only 3 has been taken so far. There's the Broncos, the Raiders. Who else is probably in the market? The Vikings, of course. Jesus,
I think the Vikings are sitting here lapping it up, thinking, "Oh my God, JJ McCarthy's fallen to 11, and we didn't have to move up at all."
That's a very good point, because I mean, the Bears aren't going to take him, and nor the Jets.
Well, you're looking at the Bears now going, that pick is probably not going to be in play. They probably take a Dunze with that one, so your quarterbacks are still going to be available. You're sitting tight here and you're licking your lips.
The only danger with that, though, is, as you alluded to at the start of the program, that the Bears only have 4 picks in this draft. Is if they get a wealth of picks to take a trade down from 9 to later on in the first round, and a second or a third or even a couple of sixths, it is a danger. So if you're a Minnesota fan, I wouldn't quite be buying the JJ McCarthy jersey just yet.
No trade.
Pick is in for Atlanta. Yeah, I think this is
Dallas Turner.
relatively expected.
Now.
They're considering Michael Penix at number 8.
No.
Well,
Considering.
Well, I have to say, if they do go with Michael Penix at number 8 with Kirk Cousins, that is exactly what I said in January I wanted the Patriots to do. Now, I wouldn't have done it with a first rounder, but I definitely would have liked to have seen a young quarterback like Michael Penix sit in behind Kirk Cousins for a couple of years and then
I
come
remember a team that took a quarterback high in the first round while they had their quarterback in situ, Jordan Love.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I think that is a great template. We have to remember as well, like a lot of the great quarterbacks, even going back to Joe Montana, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, they didn't play in their first season. So I think with Kirk Cousins in situ, there is a great opportunity to bring in somebody who is the future of the franchise. Because how old is Kirk Cousins? He hasn't got. I know he got signed a contract that will keep him there for 4 seasons, I think.
He's
And
living
I think
right,
what's
though. He'll train till
interesting with him as well, though, I mean, obviously Cousins is a good pro to have there for a young guy to learn behind, but also he's coming back off a big injury. Maybe you just want to protect yourself in case, for whatever reason, he's not right on the field.
No, it's not Dayball. What's his name? Goodell is moving a little bit quicker, I think. Is someone giving him a kick?
Here we go. I'd be stunned if it's a quarterback, but.
Michael Penix.
Wow.
On the money. Ian Rappaport. There you go.
Sunglasses are raised at this draft night. Oh my God.
In a shock to nobody, I know nothing. We are still waiting for a defensive player. That's everything I've said about Dallas Turner gone. Does Dallas Turner now go to the Chicago Bears? We'll get to that in a second.
I think it's very much in play.
I think it's a coin toss between Turner and Odunze for me now.
Absolutely.
Unless they're hot on Jared Verse.
We've had our first wow moment of the night. If people are like, why do you like this draft?
This well there and the chat there as well.
Cousins is 35. Declan has just confirmed that for you there in the comments.
Thank you very much, Declan, our resident
Broncos and Raiders
researcher.
now. So you're
But it goes to show you, because you hear so many stories in the build-up week after week, you kind of think you know what these teams are thinking. We really don't know what these teams are thinking. We don't know if people love a Dunze as we think they do. You know, so maybe the Bears don't go that way. It'll be interesting to see, as Shane was talking about, the Bears obviously have only 4 picks. Are they going to move back at all to try and bulk that up a bit? Or, I mean, Dunze seemed really happy with Caleb Williams. He was out throwing with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. So maybe he already had an idea that this might be the way it was going to play out for him.
I have to say that I'm a big fan. I was saying earlier that this is effectively what I wanted the Patriots to do, because I thought the Patriots could have, in theory, gotten Michael Penix in the second round. This is exactly what I think a team who is really trying to plan for the future should do. The problem is, though, do you have 2 seasons now for Kirk Cousins before a decision really has to be made as to whether Kirk Cousins moves on, retires.
Can we spare a thought for Arthur Smith and all this? He labours in Atlanta for years and never had the quarterback, and now they frickin' signed 2 of them once he goes out the door.
Commit so much money to the Kirk Cousins program. Like, Michael Penix is not going to play for 3 years, realistically. If the Falcons
Well, unless Kirk Cousins gets injured,
When we
which
did
is
our-
quite possible.
When we did our NFC South covers last year, you consistently said this is arguably the best team in the division. They had a proper quarterback to win this division, and they should have, and that should have been the case. The Bucks came on late in the season and they played well in the playoffs. You know, I was high in the Saints, but you were consistent. They've got a really good, strong offense. They brought in Bijan Robinson last year, and they were a quarterback away from being a really strong side. They've done that now with Kirk Cousins. And whether you're a fan of Kirk Cousins or not, he's a consistent quarterback in this league, and the Falcons will be better for it. Michael Penix's highlight rate is fantastic, and there's a lot of kind of doubts over his injury, but ultimately, over the last few weeks, it's been recognised he will go in the first round. He's going to sit. You're talking about Jordan Love. It's the same scenario here, except the Packers were way down the board and in a much better position.
Head to go across. The pick is in now for the 9th overall for Chicago Bears.
Bears aren't hanging around at all tonight.
Is it possible now that we are going to have a draft where none of the top 10 are defenders?
Oh, who? And none of the top. There was no trades in the top 10 either. Who said that before?
I didn't want to mention that one.
When I got them all wrong, but I said there were no trades.
But now this will be interesting. I'll let the lads take on.
This is interesting because I have no idea.
I'm thinking it's a Dunze.
I'm hoping it's a Dunze. I think it is. He seemed fairly close with the Bears players and Caleb Williams and
Flew to Detroit with them.
yeah.
But that is the biggest shock tonight so far. I know it's been mooted and suggested over the course of the last 48 hours. I think some of us might have scoffed at it that Michael Penix Jr. would go to the Falcons. And again, on Monday, Steve Boyce said, you know, Raheem Morris is defensive oriented head coach. You know, it's all the likelihood is he'd want to get a stellar defensive player in immediately. So
I do like Penix though. I mean, he has a great arm. He probably has the best arm, or if not one of the top 2 best arms in this draft. And to sit behind a player like Cousins is
draft a quarterback when you want one, not when you need one.
But I think he's a great player. Like, there's a lot of teams I think were hoping that Michael Penix would fall into their lap and again sit behind whoever's there now and come in there for a year. I know Ben, Seahawks fan, was dying to have it in, and there are other teams. I think the Raiders and the Broncos are probably hoping that one of those would land him. So that's a real spanner in the works there.
Well, we didn't get the trades we wanted, but we definitely got the wow moment there with that draft pick. Here we go, Roma Dunze.
Here we go, running Roger. Oh no,
Going
sorry.
Rome.
Rome wasn't built in a day, guys. Remember that? Yeah.
JJ McCarthy. Roma Dunze.
Here we go.
I think the Bears.
Well, I'm going to pass it over to. We should pass it over to guys. To start with you, Noel. Is that who you expected? Is that who you want?
No, that's who I mocked. That's who I wanted.
Oh, so you're right. That's the important thing.
I'm right, and that's it.
That's not
But
what I want to know.
I think this is a great move. Obviously, they brought in Keenan Allen. You know, he may be there for a year or two. Who knows? We'll see how that develops. You have DJ Moore there, and now you have Roma Dunze coming in. You know, he's that big, hopefully X-type receiver that can just. And we talked about it earlier. There, you know, he doesn't have the expectation to go and win games for the Bears. There are number one wide receivers ahead of him in that. They'll take the bulk of the pressure, and he can just learn behind these guys. And it's great for Caleb Williams as that young quarterback. The weapons he has now with Kmet, with Gerald Everett brought in, you know, Swift can take the ball. He can take a pass as well. And then you have those 2 guys there along with Roma Dunze. I am really excited to see this Bears offense next season.
No, likewise, I couldn't be happier. You know, you got DeAndre Swift and Cole Kmet, as you mentioned, likely the quarterback's friends for those, you know, and the game Keenan Allen plays now, he's the, you know, nippy, get beyond the sticks guy.
Yeah,
he's not necessarily going to be your downfield threat. You're allowing Roma Dunze time to develop into that role rather than throwing him in and expecting him to be the guy right away. Actually, I was listening to an interview driving down here with him on CH Go, and he was talking about how he was excited at the opportunity of learning if he went to Chicago from guys like DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, and what a great wide receiver room that would be to go into. There was a lot of talk about that throwing session that himself, Caleb Williams, DJ Moore and Keenan Allen had in Los Angeles before flying out.
We have a trade.
We do.
We have a trade.
Minnesota moved up to one place. They moved to one place. So this is.
So this is the JJ McCarthy move.
So they've swapped to the Jets. So the Jets are picking now.
They obviously thought the Broncos were going to go McCarthy, right?
I imagine. I imagine that they jumped up just to ensure that no one else got the Jets pick. It's not that they were afraid of the Jets
I
being the
think
quarterback.
there's you got to bear in mind you got Raiders and the Broncos 12-13.
And the Jets still probably get
they'll all
Brock
feel
Bowers.
like
There was
they all feel like a quarterback is within striking distance now. So you know the Vikings really have to make that.
There was
move.
quite a good question there I put up. I think it was by Declan. I'm not quite sure. It's gone off the screen now. Where does Dallas Turner, who is I think will be or one of the first defenders picked in the draft, goes now? Because with the Vikings now picking at 10, the Jets picking at 11, who don't really need an edge rusher. They're going to go for tight end.
Saints paying for Dallas Turner?
So 12th overall is the Broncos, 13th overall is the Raiders. Am I right in saying that?
I would actually challenge that slightly. I know it's a bit extreme and everyone is assuming Brock Bowers is for the Jets. It wouldn't surprise me if the Jets went defensive edge. I think they've by and large, they have a really strong defense, and sometimes you put another layer to that defense and makes it even stronger, and that's how you win the games next season. Aaron Rodgers coming back, Mike Williams has come in.
Well, I think that's a really good point. The 49ers ended up one edge rusher short. Chase Young was supposed to be that guy and he didn't pan out. They probably lost the Super Bowl because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I remember
strong and all as that defense was.
Chase Young came in initially in the first quarter of the Super Bowl, made that fantastic play, and you said, he's going to rewrite, mince our words, and then he went missing for the entirety of the game. He didn't really.
Yeah, the pick is in for Minnesota, so I think it's Minnesota McCarthy more than likely. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think
there's the.
What's the haul now? So Jets get the 11th, they get a 4th round pick and a 5th round pick.
They swap out a 6th though.
I mean, if you're a New York Jets fan, that's pretty good because you've upgraded what you can do in the 4th and 5th round, but you're not really changing who you're picking in the first.
No, you'll drop one spot and you'll probably still get who you wanted. So
from a Jets point of view, that's pretty shrewd. So
give away 6, but again,
and the Jets only had 7 picks.
Yeah, but you're getting 4th and a 5th. So I mean, you've upgraded from a 6th to a 4th and a 5th basically. That's effectively what you're doing because you're not really changing what you're doing in the first because they didn't want. Yeah, they didn't want a quarterback, and they know that Minnesota do. So,
and the Vikings are looking at going into tonight. They probably felt they wouldn't have that 23rd pick, and now, lo and behold, here they are. They're getting the quarterback, and they're going to hang on and get an additional pick in the first round.
Yeah, I think this it's worked out probably better than I imagine many in Minnesota expected it because I imagine they were expecting that they might need it to sling to move up the draft, and if only need to move up one spot, that's just the way things have fallen for them. So. Things are.
We talked about it a little bit in the run up to the draft. Minnesota is a great landing spot for a quarterback.
It is.
They
really are set up.
You got the weapons. You got that exciting Brian Flores defense that performed beyond all expectations. Bar Colin Cronin's, who expected them to be great and was proven absolutely correct.
I think it will be a great landing spot, particularly for JJ McCarthy. I think it's the kind of player who would. A, thrive in that environment. B, is used to being in that general part of the country and someone who I think will have the connection. But C, I think Kevin O'Connell has a system where, if we look at the way that Harbaugh played with Michigan, a lot of it was just sort of basically taking the ball, trying to do what you could do to get it over the line. I think what O'Connell will do now is push him, because he is still a very young player. He's 21, 22. Yeah. Like, he will push him now to really sort of to expand on his abilities to pass the ball with some great weapons.
You got Justin Jefferson. I think the Vikings did very well out of that Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones maneuver with the Packers. I think they got the better player there. Injury history notwithstanding. Yeah. You got the tight end. Yeah,
Jordan or Addison is there as well.
One of the most impressive things I've seen in the NFL in recent years, and we talked about it at length, and we met the guy in Las Vegas, is what Kevin O'Connell did to coach Josh Dobbs through his first game. A guy who literally arrived in town 2 days before and didn't even know the names of his offensive linemen, didn't know the snap counts, the cadence, all that sort of stuff. He's talking him through the plays in his headset. I don't think there's many coaches in the NFL who could do that.
No, he was stellar with the pastronaut, you could say. And I think it is, again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, the coaching is really important into what happens, the situation these guys are coming in. The fact that the Vikings are without a quarterback but still being able to pick somebody in the top 10, I think this is potentially, for whoever it is, we don't know that it's JJ McCarthy. I expect that it is, but I think this has the potential for a great win-win situation, just a good marriage of the right attributes.
With Sam Darnold there as well to help if it doesn't play. If he goes in initially and they take, it's going to take a little bit of time. We can't start him immediately. Sam Darnold's a nice kind of holding bridge quarterback they could start. He obviously had productive enough time whilst he was back up in San Francisco.
Had a couple of nice games with the Panthers as well. It wasn't all bad there either.
Yeah.
Couldn't be Bo Nix for the Vikings, no chance.
No, sorry, no.
No, I'm not.
No, I was going to say Bo Nix now. Is he in play for the Broncos or Raiders? Because there was a lot of talk that the Raiders would want to get Penix Jr. Or maybe the Broncos do need defensive help. Maybe they go Dallas Turner.
Well, Penix was the prototypical Raiders big arm quarterback. He had Raiders written all over him, didn't he? But that's obviously not going to be the case now.
Yeah. I'd be interested if Colin was here to see his thoughts on if Bo Nix was selected by the Broncos, because I think he was a bit precarious, but he would be convinced he was the long-term answer. I'd be interested to see. And I think Noel touched on there, like the Vikings have moved up because they were scared by someone leapfrogging them over the Jets, so it makes 100% sense for them to do that. But they are taking the time getting the pick in.
But we were enjoying the ads. So we're watching the American stream here, so we're getting the American ads and the two great commercials, one for lawnmowers and one for Jesus. That is as NFL as it gets. All we're missing is the Bud Light, really. There seems to be quite a, I guess, obviously strong home crowd out there, and not so much for a mix that the guys are.
I think the crowd are a little bit disillusioned because they all felt they'd be like the bell will be ringing and there'll be trades after trades, and it hasn't been the case at all. So they're probably all going to be
still waiting for their own team to pick. Let's not forget, there's still a good while to go before that happens.
There's a. Not quite sure who this group here is with Roger Goodell.
So the Jets are on the clock whilst we're awaiting the pick.
So what will General Manager Aaron Rodgers do? He didn't say anything. He didn't say anything on the Pat McAfee show by any chance as to who he wants. I'm not quite sure. If anybody watches. Actually, he doesn't do the Pat McAfee show.
No, that got a bit controversial, so they had to back off for a while.
Too busy smooching up with Robert F. Kennedy. But anyway, sorry, my bitterness is coming out. Probably shouldn't be, because
Roger has to thank a number of people here, which is delaying the selection, the inevitable selection, Conor. What's ahead first? 5 quarterbacks in the first 10 picks, if it is a quarterback. First time.
Does it equal the record then? 6 and 83 was the most in a first round.
JJ McCarthy is a Minnesota Viking.
I think this is a good move for the Vikings and McCarthy. I know, Brian, myself and you did a podcast there maybe about a month ago, and we were kind of talking about quarterbacks, and I did feel McCarthy was the right fit for the Vikings for everything we've talked about, the situation they put in place and the kind of player he is. So I think this is a good move for them, and it'll just be interesting to see now, how quickly he kind of settles into it.
I'd love to know that situation. Sorry, we're just seeing shots of, I'm assuming, McCarthy's home, and he got handed a Minnesota Vikings cap from the back. Did they just sit there with 32 caps? They
have 32 caps there, yeah.
When we finished the recording on Monday with Steve Wyche, we actually spoke about this. Me and Conor, we spoke to Steve Wyche about the fact that there was only 13 players invited, and last year there was, I think it was in regional 19, and the NFL are conscious that they want to diminish it and bring it down, because the pressure of these guys are sitting in the green room if they don't get selected, and the cameras are on them, the intensifying.
Well, I always remember the Brady Quinn, sitting there as pick after pick after pick went, and you were just like, I feel so sorry for him.
Aaron Rodgers
is gold.
Yeah,
looking
great.
back now.
Will Levis last year. Didn't go to the second round.
He had to come in the next day.
The Titans tried to get trade up into the first round.
The other point Wyche made, which was really interesting, was the agents and the representatives are obviously very cute, and they'll have the home decked out in all the branded gear. Whatever endorsement you have, you can be sure it'll be plastered over the walls of whatever abode in which you're sitting with your family and friends while your pick is being announced and your card is being turned in. Jets on the clock now. Of course, we're turning our attention in that direction now.
I think it's worth. I think it's worth remembering. That the Jets pick is in. Just the importance of what they need to do here, because the 3 AFC teams that aren't the Patriots are, I think, 3rd, 4th, and 5th in terms of the least amount of cap space they have. So this is really important for them if they want to try and make the most of the Aaron Rodgers season that they're going to have. They need to really pick somebody who is talented.
Some interesting juggling on the offensive line as well, which freed up about $8 million in cap space, I think, and they got a couple of good players in there from the Ravens. So which I think is the right thing to do. I mean, would it shock you if they took an O-lineman here?
It wouldn't shock me. No, I mean, you know, with the trauma of 4 snaps for Aaron Rodgers, you might say, okay, well, we're going to try and do whatever we can to protect what is our greatest asset in a season where there is really great opportunity, I think, in the AFC East for the Jets.
They did give up more sacks than any other team last year. It was the Jets and the Giants, I think.
The Giants were, I think the Jets were third. The Giants were 85, the Commanders were 65, and the Jets were 64, 63, somewhere around that. So, you know, that is somewhere where they really need to improve on. So I wouldn't... that wouldn't shock me, but I think it's important to remember as well that, you know, if you're a Jets fan, you're sitting here with a real opportunity to win the AFC East, because the Bills are losing talent, the Dolphins are losing talent, and the Patriots are 2 years away from being competitive. So this is really important, and I think whether they select a defender, the tight end that we're expecting, or an offensive lineman is a real, I guess, insight into their strategic planning for this year, because I'm not quite sure how much long-term planning they really are.
There's no long-term planning. They've saved their jobs. It's win or bust.
This team is win or bust now at this stage. I mean, they have a really good defense, and it's the offense that needs to be sorted. You know, you mentioned they brought in a few experienced O-line players who I think can start and you know, be the starters for them there, but I think they're going to want another weapon in there with Aaron Rodgers, you know, and I think Brock Bowers just makes a lot of sense with the ability he has.
Actually, that's again, sorry to go on again about it, but that was the key one in which Steve Weiss called out. We spoke about when it was George Payton as the GM being under the most pressure going into this draft. He rightly called out Joe Douglas. It's a winner now situation. If they don't have a successful season in the AFC East, the likelihood he's gone and the head coach certainly will be gone too. I have a feeling something's going to go amiss here. You know that it's so obvious. It's supposed to be Brock Bowers.
Exactly. I know. Yeah, I get that feeling.
They never do it a traditional way.
No,
offensive line makes sense.
They think differently there, which, you know, again, is not a bad thing. I mean, a lot of the great successful teams have managed to think differently. But this is, the Goodell is coming on here. So
I know you didn't say the most successful teams in the same sentence as the New York Jets.
Well, yeah, same division. Ooh.
O-line. There we go.
I think that probably alludes to your point that they recognise that giving up sacks is a problem, especially with Aaron Rodgers, you know, a quarterback at the twilight of his career who suffered a season-ending injury, and I'm not quite sure what the backup situation is there either. I think that for them the strategy is, Aaron is great, let's give him the protection, and the rest of the guys
the strategy serviceable. Is we hope Aaron is still great after he comes back from that Achilles injury. We don't know whether Aaron Rodgers is
the strategy is very much based on the talents of Aaron Rodgers, and not necessarily on the talents of who he's throwing the ball to.
Yeah, but you got to make sure as well that this is why the pick is, okay, we don't know what Aaron Rodgers is going to come back like next season, but if he does come back to be the quarterback, which we saw it from his time with the Packers, let's make sure we have the right players around and protect him.
And you know, you're thrown to Garrett Wilson, you're thrown to Mike Williams now as well. They're not devoid of weapons, so it's an interesting pick by the Jets, I have to say.
See, my kind of reasoning for
Brock Bowers, but it's not necessarily going to placate the fan base either.
Because you mentioned Mike Williams, but he's coming back off an injury as well. True. So you have your quarterback and your wide receiver, you know, coming off injury. So there's question marks there as to how they kind of hit the ground running, or if that injury plays a part.
I just want to reflect here on the top 11 as it is now, the starting 11, if you will. Why are teams, considering how important, obviously, you know, defensive side of the ball is, how come we're going to a point where no defenders have been picked? And I can understand, obviously, it's 11 individual situations.
Because the old cliche isn't true. Defense doesn't win championships. Offense wins championships.
Used to. I don't think.
It's a different game now.
Well, the Chiefs in the 2022 season, offense won championships there. The Chiefs' 2023 season, defense won that championship.
It didn't. Well, yeah, the defense helped them not lose it. They won because Patrick Mahomes went 8 for 8 on the final drive when they needed to.
Yeah, but they didn't exactly. It wasn't exactly surrounded with the best wide receiver core, as was well documented. His O-line was yelled at consistently. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm coming at this from a more old-fashioned perspective, but I still think that having that I think teams are neglecting the need for a top edge rusher, and I don't know whether the Denver Broncos are in a situation where obviously they're relatively desperate for a quarterback, but whether they're going to.
I think now,
first.
bearing in mind where we are with the quarterbacks, I think the Broncos will go defense. I was reading some content around what's a need. They need an edge rusher. They need to get
somebody to knock down Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily doubling down on your point, Shane, but it is valid because that's a Super Bowl. Let's be fair. Like the 49ers had that game. The opportunity was there to win it. The Chiefs weren't playing offensive for large parts of the game, and it was the Chiefs defense that held them in the game. There was time after time which the Niners felt like that was an opportunity to put them away. They never got it done. But again, you get to overtime and you bring in the greatest quarterback there is right now, and he goes 8 for 8. You win a Super Bowl. I think it's a combination of everything, but it doesn't necessarily. I think this year is unique. So many offensive players talented, whether it's offensive line, wide receivers, quarterback. It's just one of those years where it means that the defensive players are going to fall down. There will be a running defensive players sometimes. So cornerbacks at some stage tonight.
There's going to be a barrage of cornerbacks, but I just think it's also worth remembering.
This is actually playing into the hands of the 49ers, the Chiefs, the Ravens,
fantastic.
the teams that are set to win now. Like they're looking at the back end of the draft going, well, we're not sitting so poorly now. Like there's a lot of good players are going to fall in areas where they would like to top up.
Well, I think more to when I was chatting at the top of the program, I said I thought what the Rams would do would be very interesting because they were in a position where they could easily trade down or trade up. I think that the way things are falling for them now, considering that most of their holes are on the defensive side of the ball, particularly in replacing Aaron Donald, but also in cornerback as well. I think they're picking 20th overall, if I'm right in saying. They're in a pretty good position.
Yeah. The Rams, that is.
The Rams, yeah.
The way things are falling now at the moment.
Yeah, I think they're quite happy with this.
You got Dallas Turner, Jared Verse still available, Terrion Arnold, the cornerback, Byron Murphy still available, Ayatu Latu still available.
Quinyon Mitchell.
Yeah, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, a lot of good defensive players, a lot of highly touted defensive players still floating around there, Shane. Like that is going to be the narrative of the second half of the first round here.
Yeah.
A big part of it at least. Broncos pick is in. We're waiting for Roger Goodell to announce it now.
Key would be over the moon if Brock Bowers was to fall to the Dolphins at 21. I think that might be a bit of a stretch. I think, we touched on. I don't see him getting past the Saints at 14.
Well, why did the Dolphins move up? This is the first time that
I don't think the Dolphins have enough picks this year to be moving up. That's not a problem.
First time Mike McDaniel has had a first round pick to play with, so it'll be interesting to see how they decide to use it. I think the Dolphins are again another team that really needs to improve on defense, but we'll probably pick on offense. So I think like that the hope that Brock Bowers will fall down is one that's probably held by a lot of Dolphins fans. But they're a team that really needs
offensive line help.
They also need that as well. Yeah.
Your hunch on the Broncos, kind of?
Yeah.
Defense will be an interesting one here now.
You don't think they're going quarterback here?
I'm sorry, the pick is in. Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Bo Nix is the only one they're after. Again, it's over the course of the last 2 weeks, it's going to be suggested.
You think they might pick him up in the second round? You think they'd take that chance?
Someone might trade back up for him now.
Yeah.
We're just listening to Ian Rappaport.
I was going to say, if you're
spot on with the Michael Penix.
Yeah, if you're on why we're all silent, Ian Rappaport is popping on. It's like, it's our great leader. Tell us what is happening, Ian.
Well, he called the biggest surprise we've seen so far, so that's why we're all hooked.
It is definitely the shock of the first round so far. Anyway, I mean,
alluding to Bo Nix potentially going here or to the Raiders.
Or to the Raiders, yeah. But if Bo Nix goes now, what do you do as the Raiders? I mean, they need a quarterback as well, but do they use up their first round pick for that? I don't know. I think that, again, it's as is often the story, this pick will determine what their division rival will do. And I don't know, that will probably play on their minds that, not only that they're grabbing someone for themselves, they're taking someone that the Raiders may want away from them as well.
Do we really think they go Bo Nix now?
I'm going to...
That's it.
I think they go defense.
I think they need Bo Nix, frankly.
Although I have seen people kind of match him here with the Broncos because certain things he does remind people of Drew Brees, and obviously they put the Peyton Brees link in there. And there we go.
It did go
Bo Nix, the quarterback.
6 quarterbacks in the first round.
Bo knows Denver.
6 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks.
Supposedly he's the new Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, that's
he's the new one. So what's that mean? He's not going to be playing much.
well, obviously not. He's not a lefty. You know,
And this is the interesting one, because when you look at the quarterbacks in which they have on the roster, obviously done the Zach Wilson trade this week, you would expect him to be really challenging to be the starting quarterback on the opening day. It's not going to be like a scenario which you discussed earlier on with the Patriots, and you know,
having to cover Brissett,
and give him a little time.
No, I think Bo Nix is starting.
He's in the mix, yeah. Absolutely.
Which is slightly unfair to Zach Wilson, who I think has potential in the right coaching setup. But I think Bo Nix, not only that, Sean Payton picked Bo Nix, so he's going to stick with Bo Nix and work with his man.
Yeah.
So you have to that's what he's going to do. He's not going to have a quarterback controversy. He's picked his man. He's gotten rid of Russell Wilson, and he's going to try and build a team around it. Which he's putting his own stamp on it.
The family delighted there. Do they have the plastic over the couch? I need to see a replay of that.
Well, God, we're having
guarding against drinks spillage.
Is that the equivalent of wearing the sunglasses you wear?
Let's hope the Broncos look after him as well as he looks after the furniture.
Keith has reminded me that Tua didn't miss a game last year. I suppose we were reflecting on previous injuries, Keith, which Tua has had. And, you know, the previous season with concussions and various different injuries.
No. Don't be saying we. You, Brian.
Okay, there's the Broncos crowd. Happy.
He says Tua didn't miss a game last year. He didn't turn up in Arrowhead Stadium against the Chiefs. I know.
Fired.
That, and if you look closely, there is Colin there in the right with the hat.
That's him there with the unicorn.
It will be interesting to get Colin's thoughts tomorrow on this one. Now, the pick is in with the Raiders. They are not hanging.
The Raiders are quick. The Raiders.
What are we thinking here?
Chips are in.
The Raiders going to.
No, I think the defender to someone part of Max
cornerback, probably Terry and Arnold.
I think somebody to Shane, a true Pat's comment. Thanks, Keith. Yes, it is. And well, look, the Dolphins are a better team now. So. Sorry, I think they're going to go with someone to partner Max Crosby
you've got Turner and Verse there now, and
I think it's going to be Dallas Turner would to me make the most sense, but it depends who Max. It might depend who Max Crosby prefers out of those two guys, honestly. And
Terry and Arnold was the consensus pick, but I don't think anybody thought Dallas Turner would still be available.
No.
But they brought in Watkins in free agency, which was a marquee free agent signing. Did he really want to go?
A lot of money shoring up that line, yeah.
Cornerback makes sense there. There's a lot of vertical threats within the division, and they've been struggling there. But the way things have gone over the last hour
against Bo Nix now. So.
What was the odds of the first defensive player to go being a cornerback? I also don't know the odds for the first 12 players to all be offensive. I think it's interesting. Well, you have to wonder as well. Sorry, this is my journalist brain kicking in. If you're a pundit sitting down writing mock drafts, at what point do you think I'm going to throw in a defender here just so it looks like I'm not being too overly offensive? And it turns out that the first 12 picks are all offensive players anyway. Sorry, that was just a weird aside.
The pick came in very quick on this one, Conor.
Yeah. So they had their best player available by the looks of it. Or else.
I don't think you can expect any dithering from the Raiders, to be fair.
Probably can't believe their luck.
As a club.
Brock Bowers? I know they have it.
Here you go.
Brock Bowers,
the tight end.
It's not how I would have expected, but that has the look of best player available.
Yeah.
I think so. And the so-called next Travis Kelce is now going to be in the same division as the current Travis Kelce. So if there's the next Taylor Swift, that's going to be your boyfriend in 10 years.
Surprised me slightly because they went for a tight end in the second round last year. But as Conor says, maybe at this point it's just best player available. Whoever they wanted originally is gone, and he is a very, very good player. So it's hard to turn down that player when potentially you didn't expect him to drop to you at that stage.
That is potentially somebody who in 2 years' time is one of the best in his position in the league. So I think that's fair enough. I'm not arguing. I can kind of understand why they were pretty quick in that they're probably sitting there being like, if Denver pick a quarterback, we're picking him. If not, we're picking a quarterback.
And what does that do for Devontae Adams as well? Like that's
opens up doors.
Yeah, that is really interesting from that perspective.
Who's going to show the ball from Conor? Aidan O'Connell?
Gardner.
Oh, Gardner Minshew.
The constant Gardner.
Gardner Minshew is, isn't bad, but I think they do need to add some form of youngster to develop.
He's hilarious. He should have a residency in Las Vegas. Never mind.
So
be the
he should
quarterback.
be in a comedy club or something.
Uncle Rico. We love Uncle Rico.
So as a defense,
Sorry, I love how we've all skipped over Aidan O'Connell. Are we all continuing to skip over Aidan O'Connell as a possible starting quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders?
I think
I'm sure there'll be an open competition there for them. But I do like Gardner Minshew. I do think he is a good player, but I don't know. Can you win it all with him? Maybe not, but maybe he's good enough for now till you can build.
Here we go. The New Orleans Saints. New Orleans, of course, being the host city.
Dallas Turner, maybe?
Being the host city of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, Saints is an interesting pick here now. There's a lot of options on the board that they probably wouldn't have expected to be there, including, as we've said repeatedly, Dallas Turner. We keep calling out Dallas Turner. Eventually, we'll be right.
Yeah.
Someone will take him.
Keep saying it.
I don't know. Maybe we put the mockers on it. I don't know.
But again, they're another team that has significant O-line needs and probably have more choice at that position now than they perhaps would have thought. They've still got 2 or 3 guys there. They didn't have the Trevor Penning thing was obviously an absolute disaster for them. Ryan Ramczyk, knee injury, not somebody you can necessarily rely on. That's a problem, and that was an issue for Derek Carr last season and for that offense. They got choice now, though. They're in an interesting spot.
If I just go back to, I think, what I said when we was kind of previewing this last week, I said that I don't think there was much point in the Saints using their first round pick on an offensive player, because at least if they could go defense, that's something they can build on for 2 or 3 years' time when they eventually get at the offense kind of rebuilt after what was a really kind of failed experiment with Derek Carr. And now, considering that the best players available are probably all defensive players because the first 13 have been offensive players, it probably makes sense for them to pick somebody on the defensive side of the ball. I'm not quite sure whether they would prefer a cornerback or somebody on the front line.
Is Jared Verse in play here? Bearing in mind that he was, highly touted as potentially one that would leapfrog Dallas Turner as the first defensive player.
Kieran's a big fan of Jared Verse, FSU player, Florida State, obviously playing in the Aer Lingus College Football Classic in the Aviva in August.
And Trevor just put a message in there into the group: go get Dallas, and that seems to be the general consensus from Saints fans. They want to see Dallas Turner come in and be impactful on the defense. We spoke about the defense at the start of last season, kind of around if this team could just get the offense right, because the defense can take care of itself. But it has been an aging defense. We spoke about it on the show last week. They need to kind of bring the average age down, but this would be an immediate upgrade in terms of what they have available to them.
Well, they do have 9 picks in the draft as well, so they've a lot of work to do, but they're probably in a better position than they maybe thought that they would have been heading into this now.
Is there a possible trade happening here, the fact that the pick hasn't come in, or are we reading into too much because the Raiders picked so quickly?
Who's trading up and for what, though, is what's interesting to me here.
The Bills, because they need better defensive players to take down.
To go for a wide receiver? Or?
No, the Bills need a wide receiver, but I think I suppose that could be a possibility as well. Or the all-in Dallas Cowboys who go for Dallas Turner, but I can't see that happening.
I mean, I'm looking GM's left on the board as well. Howie's always good at the Eagles to make a move up, down, sideways, whatever. Could be a man who could do something, but
it's a precarious.
Trade action looks limited from here. I'm gonna say.
I think one of the leading stories of this first round tomorrow will be the lack of trades. What did we have? One, and that was to move up one place. And kind of, you could argue that wasn't really a trade.
But what a place, though! That one place was so exciting, excellent.
Well, bearing in mind that the Broncos went quarterback immediately, maybe the Broncos were comfortable staying there and taking Bo Nix. As it wasn't going to be JJ McCarthy, we're comfortable with Bo Nix. We'll sit tight. We didn't have to move up. And maybe they called the Vikings bluff.
Again, that's what made the Atlanta's pick such a spanner in the works, because that probably thrown out just sort of plan B and plan C, and probably plan D of the Raiders and the Broncos, quarterback wise. So they could sit there and sort of let the talent kind of come to them rather than trying to hop up the draft. So I don't know, maybe ATL are guilty of maybe by doing the most exciting thing, maybe making the next couple of picks slightly less exciting.
Saints are letting this one tick down, which I'm not so sure whether it's trade or it's they're tossing over two or three different potential opportunities here when they maybe thought there'd only be one.
I don't know if there's some, because of course it is a team based in New Orleans, whether they are consulting some form of voodoo god and they're just try. They've got 2 minutes left to get back to them. We're not quite sure. Is this Rich Eisen talking about JJ McCarthy?
I think it's one of those picks that we could go many away here. We're not.
Well, let's
Well, that's it. As you said already, there's plenty of options there for them. And
Let's call it around the table. I think they take a low lineman. I think maybe it's a Troy Fautanu.
I think it's Jared Verse. I think it's the Florida State defensive tackle or edge rusher to say.
I'm going to use your joke. I'm going to go Dallas Turner. You keep saying eventually you will get it right. The pick is in, no trade.
made the pick.
I'm going all like Fashanu. But it's going to be Dallas Turner.
Well, don't curse it now.
This is probably one of the few so far where we've kind of had no inkling. Like by and large,
No, this has been a tough one.
A reasonably, although you could say the same for the Raiders. We didn't expect Brock Bowers, but to your point, Connor, it was like best player available. Let's not waste. Let's not mess around.
Partly because New Orleans, unfortunately, because I thought this time last season I was actually quite high on New Orleans. I thought they had a really good chance of playing well, and it turns out that they have so many areas to work on that they don't have an obvious starting point.
Teams get old fast as well. You know,
Yeah,
1 year players are at their peak, the next year they're past it.
No, those windows close very, very quickly. If you don't get what you want done in time, it can all come down.
I'm also, I imagine somebody somewhere who is creating
Well,
content
they're happy anyway in the war room.
is ranking all of these war rooms. That New Orleans Saints one is good. That's
The Rams one, have you seen the Rams one? Is amazing.
I haven't. That Saints one is good because it's decked out in black. That's what you want a war room to look like. That's it's all.
Did we get word of what Rappaport was suggesting? Because the last two in which they've gone from, he seems to have nailed them.
What would Rappaport suggest?
We missed it because we were talking.
I'm sorry, that's my.
I think the general consensus is that they're all the little turnaround as to what's going to happen here.
Just in terms of what they're facing against in their own division, considering the Falcons, their biggest, most hated rivals, are quite stacked on offense. Does that maybe change how they approach this, or they're just focusing on their own squad?
Well, you raise a good point because your first task is win your division, right? You're drafting to win the division for starters.
A very winnable division, and it's proved to be a very winnable division the last couple of years. In that, I believe the Buccaneers got in, even though they had a losing record.
7-9 record, yeah. But the Bucs have won the offseason. Let's not forget that's what was suggested.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Here we go.
This is it.
Defense.
Talisa Fuanga.
Talisa Fuanga.
Oregon.
So tackle.
So they did go O-line.
So they went for an O-lineman.
Here we go.
Did I say Fashanu? Sorry, I meant Fuaga.
It's
how you pronounce it. It's how you pronounce it. I'm sorry.
Right, on that note of cultural insensitivity, we'll take a break. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
You're in control. You don't do stress. You have enough other things to get on with. You know your sport and you know the odds, so you're not afraid to choose alternatives. That's why you bet with QuinnBet, featuring live streaming of Irish and UK horse and greyhound racing. So here's to real choice. Here's to the real punters. And real punters choose QuinnBet. QuinnBet on mobile, app and desktop. We bet you'll love it. Register today at quinnbet.com.
The Aer Lingus College Football Classic is back. Georgia Tech and Florida State University touch down in Dublin on Saturday, August 24th at the Aviva Stadium. Enjoy the full American football experience with cheerleaders, marching bands, tailgating, pep rallies, as well as an exciting halftime show. Don't miss out on one of the biggest sporting events of the summer. Tickets on sale now at ticketmaster.ie.
For everything to go right on the day, takes hours and hours of dedication by an entire team. The early morning starts, the hard-working stable hands, the trainers, instinct, drive, passion, the fearless jockeys, and last but by no means least, a bit of good luck on the day. QuinnBet, proud sponsors of UK and Irish racing.
Welcome back to the Irish NFL show's Draft Night Live in association with our partners QuinBet and the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. As you join us bang on time or rejoin us, Roger Goodell just about to announce the Colts selection at number 15. And they've taken the edge rusher Laiatu Latu from UCLA. Not necessarily the first edge rusher that was expected to go off the board, lads. We've been flying the flag for Dallas Turner all night long. Still hasn't dropped, but we retained that flame burning in the background. But Laiatu Latu is a very interesting pick. Very talented rugby player, a guy who had medically retired from football at one stage, has now been medically cleared, came back. Unbelievable athlete, it really showed out over the past year, and a guy a lot of people were excited about. And there was a lot of talk that if he hadn't had the injuries that he'd had, he would have gone a lot higher.
Yeah, I think it's a good reflection of the setup they have between Chris Bollard and Shane Steichen in the Colts, that they are kind of willing to take somewhat of a risk on somebody whose talent they understand, and they're kind of looking over the medical stuff a little bit to sort of. To pick who they obviously felt is the best player left, because their biggest need is cornerback. That's something that I imagine they're going to do in the second round of the draft. But the
consensus pick here would have been Quinion Mitchell from Toledo, and they wouldn't have expected Terry and Arnold to still be on the ball. So they must really like Latu if they've gone here.
Absolutely. I mean, I imagine that there are some form of interviews. The fact that even then, as you alluded to, Laiatu Latu was one of the top defensive linemen, but not the top, I don't think, in anybody's estimation. So I think it is a good reflection of the way that the Colts as an organisation are being run. They're quite happy with him personally. The only thing that's really marking him down is the fact that he is wearing sunglasses. So I think that's maybe for defensive players, wearing sunglasses is a good thing. I'm not quite sure.
And
but
runners with a suit, so he's got both sunglasses and runners. But no, I think a lot of people did talk about Latu as being maybe the most talented edge in this class. What held him back was that injury, and obviously a medical retirement, or I think it was his neck, is not something that you can take lightly. But look, at the end of the day, as Shane said, the Colts looked at talent and said, at this stage in the draft, this is a player worth bringing in, and he is a really, really talented player. So Dallas will have to wait a little bit longer in our predictions.
Well, he will. Jared Verse will. There's value to be had here if you believe in the talent that some of these players have who weren't expected to fall this far. No cornerbacks taken, as we say, premium position that hasn't been touched so far.
So actually, just on that, I think the Colts are a rarity in that they are one of the only teams to have a first, a second, a third from 1 through 7. I think they still have if not their original batch of picks, is something very close to that. So I don't know whether it might be worth for them to package up a couple of those later round picks to try and get a corner back now in the first half. Because when I was in Frankfurt, and even watching some Colts stuff, my preparation for watching the Patriots play against the Colts in Frankfurt, it was quite clear that Dave Anthony Richardson coming back on the offensive side of the ball, they are well coached, they are exciting, they have a lot of young talent, which, given the breathing room, can really grow. But they are in a division where they're dealing with Will Levis's Tennessee Titans, a Jacksonville Jaguars team which is stacked with talent, but obviously they have to deal with their own defensive problems, and the Houston Texans, who I think are the real potential to be
contenders,
the contenders, and to be the kings of the AFC South. That is a very tough division. So if I was the Colts here, I'd be really thinking about trying to be more aggressive in filling those couple of defensive spots, because defending the pass.
We saw how the Ravens handled the Texans in the playoffs last year. That's what you need to be doing.
Defending the pass is something that the Colts really need to work on, and that was clear all the way through last season. It was clear even in the tail end last year. They didn't really have much of a pass to deal with against Mac Jones and the Patriots, to be fair. But in any other game when they were genuinely challenged on the wings, that's how you got them. It was a bit like the way Joe Flacco kind of took apart with the Browns took apart the Texans. I can't remember if it was it was in the regular season game. Yeah, hit him down the wings.
Christmas Eve,
Italian style, almost bang, 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 and that's how you take them apart. And the Colts have a similar weakness. So, if if a cornerback was something they were really serious about fixing, they would find a way to package one or two of those later draft picks and move up. I think that's something that is worth thinking about.
Seahawks, another one of those teams. They're on the clock now, of course, as Leatu Latu's doing his on-stage interview in Detroit, who have an embarrassment of riches here to pick from in terms of what their needs were. The consensus pick was an O-lineman. Troy Fautanu was the guy that a lot of people have been saying would go there. He's still available, as are a couple of others in that slot, but they also might be tempted to go for an edge rusher now.
I think the Troy Fautanu one was the one I said last week that made the most sense. He is going to go, if he gets selected there, he goes and plays for the offensive coordinator. Just came from Washington, and the offensive line coach is coming from Washington. Easy transition to go in. He knows the coaching staff. For me, it would make the most sense. They do have an offensive line need. We spoke on the show there over the course of the last couple of weeks around potentially giving Gino, again, similar scenario to what we discussed tonight, give him more support, give him the option. He didn't have the best of season last year compared to that surprising season after Russell Wilson left.
Kind of got away from the run game as well, so you would think that someone who can give them a solid bit of run blocking is what is probably part of the solution here in terms of restarting and reinvigorating that offense, which was so exciting the previous season under a new Bears offensive coordinator Shane Waldron, but
Walker, the running back, in which I think was in the second season last year, he had a number of different injuries. It was a real start-stop season from compared to his rookie season. So get him back, fully function. But again, you got to protect them. But again, they might look at the same thing which we spoke about. Jared Verse is still there. Like we talked about Dallas Turner, Jared Verse in that order, and then obviously, but it's gone against what we believe would happen. Maybe the Seahawks say these two guys are marquee in defense, and we go this route.
And their pick is in as we wait for the NFL Network to come back from an ad break, so we'll see who they do pick. But again, if you're looking at that division, Shane, you got the 49ers sitting on top of it. You got the Rams, who were better than originally advertised last year, and we were a team that we flagged as being an interesting one in terms of them picking in the first round for the first time since 2016 for starters, but also being in a better place than they thought they would be. And the Cardinals too, now that they've got Marvin Harrison Jr. teamed up with Kyler Murray. So it's interesting to see what the Seahawks are going to do to keep up in that arms race.
It's a really tricky situation in terms of the offenses that they have to face against in particular. And I think the last 3 seasons have really come down to how the Seahawks have matched up against the Rams. If they've managed to get 2 wins against the Rams, their season generally goes well. Last season, that wasn't the case.
And Pete Carroll lost his job because of what happened on defense.
Absolutely. And they didn't make the playoffs, and the Rams did because of a failure in that matchup. So it really comes down to, I think, like, the new coaching staff have to come in, sit down and decide, what do we need to really put it up to the Rams specifically? Because the Cardinals, we're not quite sure what they're going to bring now that Kyler Murray's back, and now that they've added Marvin Harrison Jr. to the offense. And they will learn, the Cardinals will learn as we go, and how you plan against the Cardinals, you will learn as you go as well. The 49ers are incredibly tough to beat. And we saw that. I was there at the 49ers meet up in Buskers on the Ball when the 49ers played against the Seahawks, and we just saw that the 49ers were just suffocatingly good on offense, on defense. That is very tough, and I don't know whether they're in a position now to be planning their entire team as to knocking them off yet. They need to find a way to keep the Rams shut. If they can plan their way to get 2 wins against the Rams, I think their season opens up. And for that reason, I think fixing defense, and like you mentioned there, Pete Carroll, one of the reasons why he got moved on from was not being able to properly structure the defense. I mean, when the Seahawks won a Super Bowl and were good enough to make other Super Bowls as well, they had Russell Wilson, they had beast mode running back, but it was the Legion of Boom defense that was the key to that. And they haven't had anything really that good for the last 5, 6, probably 7 years. So I think really, their top 2 picks should be defensive players to try and rebuild some form of identity around what it means to be a Seahawks defender. And I think, not to mention his name again, Dallas Turner will be a good start with that.
Well, they have a defensive head coach as well, coming from the Ravens.
Thoroughly jinxed Dallas Turner at this stage. He's not going in the first round. Let's just face facts.
His agent is going to start ringing Brian now, trying to get us all to shut up.
But you mentioned earlier, Conor, how the Ravens, they exploit these premium picks when they come up. And here's a head coach who's come from the Ravens who did a great job as the DC there. And for everything Shane has said, like, that's such a tough division when you look at the offenses of the other teams. And I think there are premium players sitting here that we maybe thought weren't going to be there, and the options are there.
They have tried to put the defense back to the old. Look, you bear in mind a couple of years ago, you had Kobe Bryant selected, Waldron selected, 2 players that came in immediately, did really well. You had the Jamal Adams trade a couple of years ago from the Jets, hasn't materialised, he's moved on. So they have tried, they brought in a big player from the Broncos last year in free agency. So they have done their utmost to get back to that kind of Legion of Boom type defensive scenario, but it hasn't played out that way. So, we saw last year with Smith and Jigby how effective he was, and you got Lockett, you got Metcalf, they've got the players offensively. You wonder if they just, as I said, try to secure the offensive line.
Sorry, I thought they were bringing out some form of a Seattle icon to read out this pick. So, but no, I think they're gonna do some video about American warplanes. But I was expecting some form of Seattle icon, which is either Starbucks or Fraser Crane. That's about as far as I can get with that one.
Microsoft.
I wonder what's the over-under now on trades in this first round, because we were expecting 4 or 5 potentially in the top 20. We've had one. And you could argue we've had none because they've only moved up 1 spot, giving away a 4th and the 5th. So I wonder who's going to. And there's no quarterbacks left realistically that were expected to go in the 4th round available for a trade up. I think we could be sitting pretty in what Conor wanted all along, which was a very boring, thorough, structured draft in which he has pick.
Stick to your slot.
There's a scene with that so far. Everyone's kind of gotten what they wanted, and that it's fallen.
Here we go.
A lot of people are probably feeling comfortable that it's fallen their way. Sorry,
I'm still leaning offensive line, but I think there's a good argument as to why they go defense.
I'm going to say Jared Verse.
So I'm just looking at the list of teams that could move up here.
Byron Murphy.
Oh,
Okay, they went
Byron Murphy, defensive tackle out of Texas. Again,
Rich Eisen just saying there that there's officially now a run on defensive players. We've
This
had
was
2.
very interesting.
I think it's somewhat expected.
Very interesting one there because I took the opportunity to go on the Daniel Jeremiah.
Bear in mind, by the way, not to mention his name again, Dallas Turner is in the room in Detroit, was widely expected to go in the first round and to be the first defensive player taken off the board. So he's sitting a little bit nervously now with his...
I believe with a comment earlier, someone asking what happens to the guys who were in Detroit who aren't picked, and I think it was followed by the word morto, which I think is probably how you would feel.
It's not. That's again. This is the reason why they're trying to reduce the names and reduce the numbers, and potentially at some stage get to a stage where there'll be nobody there.
Well, you don't see the camera going to them anyway. So
it just, I think again, this is a great reflection on the beauty of the draft, because we can sort of predict, we can think that certain people are going in sections A, B, C, or D, but when it actually happens, because each team has their own sets of situations that they're going to run on, it runs in a completely different fashion. And even though we haven't seen as many trades, I still think there's a lot of great talking points coming out of this.
We talked about with Steve Weiss the other day how interior guys on the defensive line are now getting paid, and we've seen so many of them. We've seen the likes of Justin Simmons getting paid. We saw Justin Madubuike getting paid. We saw Christian Wilkins getting paid. And now we have a trade. So Vikings have traded up to 17 with the Jags.
I knew it was coming. That's why I said it.
Surprised at the Jags trading out. I'm surprised at the Jags trading out of that. I would have thought they needed
a wide receiver. I thought
a top level wide receiver or cornerback.
Wide receiver. Is it Mitchell Jr.? I thought he might have been the top.
Or Brian Thomas was the other one.
But interesting enough, the Vikings probably can't believe their luck, as I said.
So, does Brian Flores now want Dallas Turner to be a part of his great blitzing defense? This is be interesting to see now as the Vikings have a pick us in.
There's a Dallas Turner narrative for every single team remaining in the first round.
I'm now wedging it in.
That's coming your way.
So this is actually a pretty good trade for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
The Jags get the 23rd overall, obviously the fifth round pick, a 3rd round pick, and a 4th round pick.
In both the next year's draft.
I think that's a bit of for 6 places. It's kind of substantial in where we are in the draft between the 23rd and the 17th.
I think
we knew the Vikings are going to trade. We just didn't know it would be this one.
Yeah,
we mocked that very well. We did.
I think that's just true. But I was originally surprised that the Jaguars moved out of that spot. But after looking at that, I think that's true. Bit of business from the Jaguars.
Who are the Vikings trading for? Are they going up for that receiver then? Is this a Brian Thomas move?
Brian Thomas.
Is it not Dallas Turner? No.
Is there anything to be said for Dallas Turner?
Anything to be said for another edgeman?
Hey!
There we we go.
Dallas Turner has been selected as the edge rusher from Alabama for Minnesota Vikings.
Feeling the absence of Daniil Hunter, that makes sense.
Kind of a shame he didn't get selected by the Seahawks because he's wearing kind of a Seahawk-like orange suit there.
Kind of
maybe
flashes with the purple, doesn't it?
He would be the ideal kind of guy.
I think the purple and that shade of green is a perfect kind of Prince fashion set. That's just perfect for Minnesota, you know.
That's true.
Oh, he's wearing the sunglasses. Oh, here we go.
I think he's. I think
They're more rose-tinted specs
for
than
his
sunglasses.
perspective, I think he'd be relieved to be selected. Bearing in mind he's been in the green room for the Bones.
Well, I know he's really to be selected. I think he's feeling pretty good that he's been selected to play for a Blind Forest.
His problem was he was wearing green in the green room. He's obviously blending in with the background. They couldn't see him.
All about him. I'm sure he could have blended in with our beautiful green and scenery here this evening.
But in fairness to him, he's had to wait a while, but he's ended up in a really, really good spot there.
Yeah, I take that.
Well, that's
and as well as I think if there's any Vikings fans watching, and as well as we get to see him play in London, by the way, in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, both JJ McCarthy and Dallas, the great Dallas Turner. So I think if you're a Vikings fan, I think you'd be pretty happy with that business in the first round. Those are two players who are going into with coaches who can work well with them specifically. You can tell that the organization is being aggressive and wants to win. They're not sticking around. They're not trying to waste. They're not trying to be too conservative. I think that's a pretty good situation that Minnesota have put them in. I don't know I can't remember what their stock is like later on in the draft, but I think certainly for headline figures, those are pretty good.
Well, they're giving their second round to Texas because the original move up. Just interesting, we suggested there to move from 23 to 17. Rory Fitzgerald's touched on it there. Pricey trade, but again, probably didn't expect to see Dallas Turner at this stage of the draft.
Yeah,
let's go take him.
I'd say, and you're trading for a premium position. It's not like they.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you end up with your quarterback, and you end up with what some people think is the best defensive player in the draft, and I mean that's a good day's work.
Yeah, this is the thing as well for these players who, are regarded as the upper echelons of their position. They're selected, they're projected to go top 10, top 15. They fall, and once it's not ideal scenarios, they're falling into better positions, and especially here with the Vikings team.
Yeah, absolutely.
You touched on earlier, alluded to earlier when you asked the question, which team intrigues you the most tonight? Are they even more intriguing now coming out with a marquee edge rusher and a quarterback?
I mean, look at the predictions at the start of the day. It was, they may have to give up the 23 and the 11 just to get up to get JJ McCarthy. Well, they didn't have to give those up, and they were able to turn that into JJ McCarthy and Dallas Turner. So, really good work from the front office there at the Vikings.
Who have we got at 18? Remind me.
Bengals picking 18.
Bengals.
Well, I'm going out on a limb here. This is bleach time on the window. This is offensive line for me, 100%.
Surely it has to be. I mean, protect Joe Burrow at all costs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Troy Fautanu still on the board, I think.
But it's also a case as well that if you look at when Burrow's been at his greatest, him throwing picks isn't that much of a problem. He has weapons. He just needs time. If he has the extra time, he will find the better pass. So you need to have somebody to protect him.
The best football he played in his life was when he was running for his life, funnily enough, before they actually addressed the offensive line. And what did he say he wanted in the offseason? Go get me Jamar Chase.
Interesting offseason for the Bengals before we get to the pick. Bear in mind, yesterday, Hendrickson requested a trade because he's not happy with it.
And they lost DJ Reader, on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. We've also have a trade still outstanding in terms of the request from T. Higgins who wants to move. Like, is it a bit of? We thought that earlier on in the offseason.
They lost the corner as well. Who did they lose? Awuzie, was it? It's gone.
Yeah, so that's another one. So they got holes. They got holes to move. Maybe you touched on it last week. You gotta protect your star asset, and ultimately Joe Burrow is that guy.
Yeah, as Shane was just saying.
No, Joe Burrow, that guy. He is. Again, the Bengals being one of the kind of few teams that don't always spend their cap because sometimes they don't always have it, and they've given a lot of money to Joe Burrow to be the leader of their franchise.
I was very hot on them last year. I had them down as the Super Bowl team. I thought that last year was going to be the breakthrough. Obviously, the Burrow injury scuppered that, but you kind of forget about them because Burrow got injured so early in the season. Although, in fairness, it didn't crumble right there, and that's probably what got Brian Callahan his shot as a head coach. On top of his body of work prior to that was what they were able to do, even with Jake Browning in and apparently the platform on fire. And they kept in a very, very tough divisional race right until the end and made a fight of it and could have made the playoffs in a different scenario. So they're a very interesting team. You also forget, let's remember, Joe Burrow is the only quarterback currently playing in the NFL who's ever beaten Patrick Mahomes in a playoff game. The Bengals pick
I
is
think
in.
the Bengals pick is in. So at least they're not trading anywhere. I'm just trying to think of the row of teams now that are kind of sitting here that could maybe feel a little bit itchy for a particular person.
Well, I think the Rams selecting after the Bengals, it's been touted over the course of the last couple of days that they might look for a wide receiver. Maybe this is falling into the laps in terms of them taking Mitchell.
Yeah.
But we are working on something they're going to go offensive line.
You have a lot of good linemen still knocking around here. A lot of highly touted prospects like Amarius Mims, Graham Barton still on the board. Jackson Powers Johnson, not sure he was necessarily projected to go in the first round. Tyler Guyton, bit of a project by all accounts, but a big unit from Oklahoma.
Just on those,
and there's edge rushers knocking around here as well.
Yeah. Well,
not Dallas Turner.
Unfortunately, not Dallas Turner. But so just on those offensive linemen you were listing out, I just want to throw a spanner in the works here. Is there a situation where the Chiefs decide they're going to move up to get the person they want to be protecting Patrick Mahomes?
I think the way things are playing out, they might not need it. I think someone might fall into that position into their laps at 32. I'm not convinced they go offensive line either. No, I think they will look to. I think they
to add a weapon.
Cornerback for me.
Cornerback.
You trade Sneed.
Yeah.
But you don't think
there's a gap there?
You don't think that they feel the greater need for a wide receiver? Although they could do that in the later rounds. Again, it's might be falling into that trap a little bit that we're focusing quite a lot in the first round. There are 7 rounds of the draft.
I know there was a lot of talk early on, after the combine, Xavier Worthy, there was, Patrick Mahomes casting admiring glances his way on social media and a little bit of kind of early recruiting going on there. AD Mitchell's still available. Obviously, Brian Thomas, a guy who maybe in some mock drafts would have been expected to already be off the board. He could still be available later on. Still plenty of picks to go before we get to the Chiefs, of course. But again, like a lot of teams we've been talking about, they're probably looking at more choice than perhaps they thought they might be.
The Bengals the pick is in. I was just about to say they're taking the time establishing whether they're going to make this pick or not. Are they holding fire for some?
The pick has been in for a while. I think this is a commercial
opportunity for. So Roger, you sit tight and we'll call you when we're ready to get the pick.
Could you imagine being that guy? Oh, the pick is in. I get to know. Oh no, hang on for a second. We have to flog a few lawnmowers. It really is building the anticipation for young people to see where their lives are going to go.
It's funny. Last year, Lawrence Tynes was doing the second round pick for the Giants, and he said that pretty much is the case. He was sitting in the green room with the pick from very early on, sitting tight, and then he actually got so nervous, having to think about making sure he called the name correctly, and then eventually they gave him the green light. You can go out now and give the information.
I think while we're waiting for this, I just want to reflect on the fact that this is probably the first draft I felt where I could actually properly analyse, because now I've turned 25. I'm now definitely older than all of the players. I can properly look down at all of these youngsters.
Perspective.
Yeah, now that I have a fully developed frontal lobe, but I can look down at all these guys.
You get to use all your wisdom now.
Significantly bringing down the average age across the rest of the panel as well.
Bringing down the average age of the Irish NFL shows.
All the great things I've learned from being live at the Dublin Rebels and the UCD and all the rest. It's just translated onto this. So we've Roger Goodell coming on now for the Bengals pick.
Offensive line?
So
I think so.
I think so.
We've already said, but when you have a quarterback like that, you need to protect him.
Is it a case of best player available and it's somebody else? Not necessarily about positions.
Marius Mims OT, the O-line. You're right.
Yeah, he was one that we spoke about last week. On our show a couple of weeks ago, Conor, when we were suggesting, we spoke with the Cardinals.
6'7", 340. I think he's the biggest guy in the draft. He's a unit.
We were suggesting him as someone that teams could consider moving from 27, 28 up to get to the late teens. He's gone at 18, so he landed in the spot that we thought. We actually felt someone might jump.
Another SEC guy, another Georgia guy who's played in the trenches, would have played against a high standard of opposition. We talked about Mims as the guy who's hasn't conceded a single sack in his college career. Only one QB hit on his watch.
Well, I don't know. Maybe there are some Big Ten fans that say that's just a lack of quality of rushing in the SEC. I don't know. I don't know.
Even from your man Dallas Turner.
Apart from him, that fella's class.
It kind of strikes us. in the sense that we're talking about quarterbacks, and in particular in the AFC, and AFC is stacked with so many great quarterbacks that we spoke earlier about Justin Herbert and the fact that he needed an offensive line guy. The Chargers did the right thing. The Bengals again have done the right thing here.
No, they have. When you have Joe Burrow, and
you're sitting in the north here. You got the Ravens and the Steelers to play twice each year. The Browns aren't exactly kind of lacking in the defensive department either. You got to build to get through that gauntlet first of all.
And when your quarterback is your franchise, you can't have him getting injured like he has done. And I think it is the right move overall.
And here we are as the Rams. This is the first ever time that the Sean McVay is having a first round pick, and considering how well that the Rams have done with their draft capital, it'll be really interesting to see how this
time for them to trade it, Shane. There's still time for them to trade it.
So sorry, 3 minutes and 40 seconds. I don't know. I think they're going to stick. I would have thought that they would have traded up by now, but I think, as we were kind of alluded to a couple of times across the program, that things are falling in place that teams may not feel.
They have 11 selections as well, so they don't need to do anything.
Just a few comments in Shane, Rory, or not Rory, sorry, it was actually Keith, you're making him feel old, but yet you're old-fashioned.
I do apologise.
Gary's been in the Jets WhatsApp group all night. They've gone offensive line. I'm sure they're happy he's going to take in the replay tomorrow.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll be there. It'll be there all night to take in. Thanks for coming on. What were the thoughts on the Jets fashion? We felt it made sense for the Jets to give Aaron Rodgers a bit more security. We spoke about it a number of times tonight in the show, in particular AFC quarterbacks and how they need to be protected by certain teams. So
I think for the Jets, it's a solid pick that puts them as favourites for the division if Aaron Rodgers is as good as he can be. So it's a solid pick, and I think they're.
If he does come back to be the quarterback which we saw a couple of years ago, you've got to make sure he's protected.
Yeah, I mean, look, is it a case of it's like riding a bike when it comes to throwing, but he just needs the extra protection, and then you're not quite sure what way he can move, whether it's easier to mark the defenders. There's going to be kind of a lot of nitty gritty tactical stuff we can get into when the season starts.
We all know the best way to get the most out of Aaron Rodgers is to draft the quarterback. He wins 2 MVPs after he drafted Jordan Love.
There are still more drafts.
He plays better when he's angry. Angry Aaron is productive Aaron.
I think we're hitting the 2-minute warning now for the Rams to draft.
Of the Rams draft house there.
I didn't see the Rams. You were saying that the Rams draft was pretty.
You didn't get it in its full glory, but you could see it's one of the brighter, more swanky affairs.
The Rams house.
The Rams house.
It's ironic. They kept promoting the fact that it was the Rams house at the Super Bowl against the Bengals, who've just been on the clock, and yet by the time they had handed over the Vince Lombardi to the Rams ownership, and the players, half the stadium was empty. It was an 80-20% split. We were talking about the Super Bowl around 70-30%. Was that the number we gave in terms of 49ers fans against the Chiefs? It was even bigger in that particular Super Bowl and so forth.
Well, that's the thing about.
And yet then essentially playing in their home stadium.
That's the thing separately about when we look at the way that the Chicago Bears are looking to build a new stadium, and we're comparison to what's being built in Los Angeles and Las Vegas, which are destination stadiums. You look at when the Steelers played against. I can't remember if it was the Rams or. I think they played the Chargers and the Raiders. They played in Los Angeles and Las Vegas this year, and it was mostly Steelers fans. It's interesting when you compare it to what the Chicago Bears are doing.
They travel very well.
We've gone on the side. The pick is in for the Los Angeles Rams. They are not trading.
First time since 2016 they select in the first round. Les Snead didn't F them picks this time around.
Who was the 2016 pick? Was that Jared Goff? That was Jared Goff.
Jared Goff, yeah.
So whoever this person is, they're going to be a fantastic player for the locals in Detroit in 5 years' time.
What are they doing here? What are they doing?
What do we think they're actually doing?
Edge rusher was the consensus.
I think replacing. I don't know. Considering that Aaron Donald is gone, do you then try to replace him straight away and then basically give somebody the banner of being the next Aaron Donald?
Jared,
and have to try and
is that Jared Bears here?
Or do they go for a cornerback?
We spoke about it a few weeks ago. There was a very mixed opinion on the show.
They could be a Terry and Arnold destination.
Yeah, I think so.
We also spoke about potentially protecting Matthew Stafford. You recognise it's a great season. He came back off the injury. You surround him with
Tyler Guyton.
I've just seen Jerry saying. I think we were talking about earlier about whether the Jets should draft a quarterback. Somebody suggested to draft Sam Hartman, the man with the greatest hair in Notre Dame, to wind him up. Which I think that'd be some crack, actually. Having the oldest college quarterback and the oldest NFL quarterback in the same room.
Quite slick and long for a period of time. Maybe they can, compare shampoos.
Oh yeah, that's it. They can.
I'm going to go wide receiver here. I think they can't. I think they
Brian
can't
Thomas.
help-
You think they go
I-
offensive?
Wide receiver, I think they can't help themselves.
That'll be fun, though. That'll be a lot of fun. That's the people's choice, I think, we'd like to see.
I think it's a very Sean McVay choice, to be fair. Jared Verse. Oh, they are going for the next Aaron Donald.
Again, this was one that Kieran felt might have went as the first defensive player off the board last night in their conversation. So.
I had him going to the Bears in my mock draft at 9.
I think I had Jared Verse going to the Rams last week, and someone said, "Oh no, he won't slip down that far," which I think was the consensus belief. But
Interestingly enough, I had a conversation with Kieran today whether he would be top 20. We were discussing odds of it on the QuinnBet page, and he was popping out as would he be selected in the top 20?
Jared Verse,
Yeah, Kieran said it was an absolute formality, but he snuck in there.
yeah, just about in the back
there.
door.
FSU player, he played.
And the 19th overall pick, just for anybody who's not keeping track.
FSU playing in August at the Aviva, obviously, in the Aer Lingus College Football Classic.
Just on the side about the Aer Lingus Classics, while we're waiting for the 20th overall pick to come on, I'm really looking forward to the fact that it's going to be against two. Obviously, the last year's game was Notre Dame, and it was a home game for Notre Dame, right? Well, I really enjoyed the year beforehand, and I know the stadium unfortunately wasn't full. I think it'll be fuller this year around. But it was you had one side of the Aviva, which was Northwestern, and one side was Nebraska. It was a much better crack. You had two different groups of bands with different styles, two groups of cheerleaders, and then kind of a territorial battle of battle cry going across. And considering you have the tomahawk chop coming with the Florida State fans, I'm really looking forward to it. I think the atmosphere to that is going to be pretty
The
good.
nature of that game, the way it played out, obviously with
The free beer.
well, I wasn't going to go there. I was going to say they were 11-point underdogs. They go and win the game, and Nebraska were big, overwhelming favourites.
The only game they won that season, Northwestern, was in Dublin. They went back to America and lost the rest.
The Nebraska coach got fired about a couple of games later.
He was under pressure from the minute he got there to the minute he left.
Who knew the Aer Lingus College Football Classic means a lot? You know, it makes and breaks careers. That's where the level we're getting at now.
It's the 0-day game for college football now. It's a big curtain raiser to the
Because
season.
if Florida State lose the one this season, after going unbeaten last year, and I won't say whinging, that's too strong, but complaining about the fact that they didn't get into the top 4 of the college football players, and they go in and lose to a Georgia Tech team which isn't in the top 25, it'd be a pretty amazing story.
Yeah, big time.
We did the 20 to 11 preview, Shane, in which you were on there a couple of weeks ago, and I think these were the opening team which you called look on and where they would go. And Shane was convinced of being wide receiver. Is this his moment? Is it the wide receiver
for the Steelers? Well, there's more available than they thought there would be, so they do need that Deontay Johnson replacement.
Yeah.
What do you need to get the most out of Russell Wilson and/or Justin Fields?
Well, I think the point I was trying to make is that they didn't need to improve in the offensive line as quickly as some people were suggesting. I think that they were one of the top 10 in terms of sacks allowed.
One left field suggestion I've heard here actually would be Cooper DeJean. Why? Because the role he plays on the defense. B, kickoff rules are changing next year. It's not something we've talked about. Cooper DeJean is a weapon as a kick returner, and there's going to be a lot more kick returns next year. Mike Tomlin might have a role in mind for him.
I think it's also worth remembering as well, or I was interested to watch Mike Tomlin during the week. He basically came out and said, we're not thirsty when it comes to how we're approaching this pick, and that suggests that he's not going for a wide receiver. I think he's going for somebody on the defensive side of the ball. But again, coaches say things to deceive half the time, so we're not quite sure how much we can read into that kind of thing.
They do like to play in the second round with the receivers as well, the Steelers. That's been productive hunting ground for them in the past.
I think among pundits who say that a wide receiver is going to the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think Brian Thomas Jr. has been a sort of consensus pick. I don't know whether that's coming out of relationship between the player and club there. So that might be one to look at.
Yeah, A.D. Mitchell is the other name that's been. People are sharply divided on A.D. Mitchell as to whether he's the value option or whether you want to steer clear.
We're yet to have a cornerback go off the board, haven't we?
We've had no corners go. Yeah, we've still got Terrion Arnold, Quinion Mitchell available, Cooper DeJean, as I just mentioned.
And again, as we say, the Steelers could be sitting there with options they maybe never predicted would actually fall their way. So,
it'd be interesting tomorrow to see the reaction to this.
So Terrion Arnold and Quinion Mitchell both in the room in Detroit, if that's any guide anyway. Yeah. So
just on that, because
in the first round.
The quarterback room is currently Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. They need a third string. They'll go for someone in the first round, will they? No,
as a quarterback?
Oh yeah, no. just because I mean the Steelers are the least mad team in the NFL. They might as well just go completely bonkers.
I think there's going to be enough of a conversation come training camp in July around who actually I'm quarterback.
I'm trying to be overly entertaining here, which of course that's not going to happen.
They're trying to obviously dampen the enthusiasm of the fans about an open competition, but
275,000 fans. What would the weather be like in Detroit this time of year for the ball to be out there? That's pretty impressive. 275,000 fans just standing outside watching the draft. It's an incredible event. It really is. So I'm just watching the stats kind of coming up here.
Someone who's watching might throw in the old temperature for us and let us know.
Oh yeah,
spring in Motown. It's probably nice enough.
The pick is in, by the way.
It is 10:30 in the evening there. I would say chilly is the word I'd use at this stage.
But they're all tightly packed. They're nice and warm.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Say they've had a few Michelobs by this stage as well.
The guys are behind the panel, so usually they're out and it's a little bit warmer, like in Vegas a couple of years ago. I was taken back by the, I don't want people to watch this because of the weather show, but I did check the Vegas weather this week. Connor, it was far cry from what we
lashing rain the first day we arrived, remember?
7
degrees Celsius according to Owen Healy in Detroit right now. Fair enough. So you need a good sombrero like that. The Steelers fan is there with his dapperly dressed.
Is Roger slowing down because he seems to be taking his time in a lot of
I think the Miami Dolphins are up next based on what we see on screen as well. So that's interesting. I think the Dolphins are a team that really need to hit on this one, whoever it is they pick. But we'll see who the Steelers come out with first.
Well, the Dolphins had that kind of slight honeymoon last year with the Bills not really being quite at the level that we thought they might be at, and the Jets obviously having the Aaron Rodgers situation. It's not going to be plain sailing in the East next year by any means.
Yeah, but the Dolphins again last year, they beat who they needed to beat up, and when they came against opposition, that was tough.
They did Dolphins things.
Yeah, with the exception of I think there was a win at home against the Dallas Cowboys, and it was their only win in the season that was against a winning team. And look, I'm not quite sure exactly how you fix that. I think you have to start with defense.
You remember, so if you saw the clip in the offseason, Mike McDaniel and Tyreek Hill saying about how he went off on him, getting manhandled by L'Jarius Sneed in the game against the Chiefs, saying you're supposed to be the best player in the league. What are we paying you all this money for?
In the playoff game.
Yeah.
I think Mike McDaniel is a good coach, and I don't know whether the removal of Vic Fangio from that room will have an effect on how the defense approaches this season, because I thought that was the big weakness in Miami when it came to those big games, is the fact. No, sorry, two big weaknesses. Sometimes Tua made some bad decisions when the game was really in the balance, when it was a 3 or 4 point game, and B, the defense I just don't think stood up well in the fourth quarter. You can't only play one good half of football, and you got caught out too many times being good in the first half and having a drop off. So I don't know whether in the pick they're going to have coming after this, they want to address that as soon as they can.
Yeah.
But we'll see who the Steelers have now.
You guys talked, Brian, yourself and Colin, when you were at the game in Frankfurt against the Chiefs, about how they had that game for the winning as well. There's just a lack of resilience about the Dolphins. They just and they got away from the run at a critical time of that game as well. So McDaniel, for all his merits, is not flawless.
Yeah, they got down early, they came back very well, and they were on that final drive to win the game. And as you said, plenty of time on the clock, got away from what they were doing well and effective to win the game.
Here we go. Here we the 20th pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Troy Fautanu
tackle.
O-line.
So they're protecting Russell Wilson.
Or Justin
Fields. Sorry, I forgot I'm sitting with Bears fans.
Let Russ cook. Let Justin fumble.
I think that's an interesting one as well in terms of how they will eventually approach the run game as well. Because, of course, the two quarterbacks they have now are probably more run not run reliant, but run capable in comparison to what they have previously with Kenny Pickett. So I wonder whether having Troy Fautanu sort of gives them extra versatility in being able to run or perform quarterback runs, especially because, you know, the NFC North, we were alluded to earlier, it's a very physical division. A lot of the games come down to, you know, keeping it on the ground, grinding it out. It's not the kind of division where you often see games where the ball is in the air for 400 yards. You know, Joe Burrow was the frequent exception to that. And you have Lamar Jackson being in the same division as well, who's shown how you can really get the most out of a team by having a quarterback who can both run and pass. You know, that was a style which I guess wasn't innovated by Russell Wilson, but it's something Russell Wilson was particularly good at, and something that Justin Fields, I think, is very good at and can be very good at with good coaching. So I wonder whether this pick is maybe a reflection on how the Pittsburgh Steelers are approaching that it's not necessarily about weapons, it's about having the guys that give you the options when you have the ball.
Two really strong running backs in the backfield.
Absolutely.
Warren and Harris, like, again, we saw towards the back end of the season in the difficult games, the weather was adverse weather conditions. As you like to say, put the ball up the jumper corner. And
well, we saw the Ravens lose a playoff game, arguably because they got away from the run at just the wrong time. And, you know, a lot of what Todd Monken did last year and was about trusting Lamar and letting him win games with his arm, which he did brilliantly, and obviously won the MVP award off the back of it. We watched him in the flesh against the Titans in London, and it was really impressive to see his increased patience and the fact that he wasn't just pulling the plug or pulling the pin and deciding to run for it. And yet, ironically, there probably was a little bit more of a need for it against the Chiefs than they actually displayed. And interesting to see that the Chiefs, when the chips were down, went and called design QB runs for the first time for Patrick Mahomes since his injury a few years back. It's always good to have in your pocket.
The pick is in here, by the way, for the Miami Dolphins. I'm just wondering when the next trade might be.
I don't know whether it was because there was a delay in giving us the pick from the Steelers and that the pick has come in so quickly. But,
there was only... When I mentioned it, I'd say about 4 minutes ago, there were 6 minutes left in the clock. So I think the clock actually did run down, but it's just running down in the background. It's not coming up for us.
Cam Hayward, Walter Payton Man of the Year, announced the Steelers pick, so that ate up a little bit of extra time. I think you're right, Shane. The Dolphins clock had already started ticking there sneakily in the background.
Yeah, the Eagles are on the clock at the minute. There was a lot of talk today that Howie Roseman would look to move up and do his usual antics in terms of manoeuvring the chess table or the chessboard, but it wasn't to be.
May not need to. I mean, the defensive back probably one of the outstanding positions of need for them, and you know, there's a lot of choice available now.
Yeah,
and the teams here that may be in a position now that they could probably start thinking about trading down and try to bolster up what they can get further down the line, particularly teams who maybe have a higher cap hit that could do it with more young talents that they don't need to pay a lot for the next couple of years. I'm not quite sure who's left in. Is that not that they could possibly jump out of that spot?
Bills.
See, I don't think as well.
Yeah, the Bills.
Bills get up to 22, make a move on one of the remaining wide receivers.
They may not have to the way things are going. They could effectively sit there, but I think everybody was just working on the assumption.
Well, actually, it depends what we've got. The Jags after the Dolphins. That's an interesting one. That you know, they don't take a wide receiver unless the Jags trade back again.
And we were working on the assumption throughout the course of the week that between, say, 20 and 32 to be a team thirsty for the quarterback, because potentially Penix or Nix will be sitting there. Neither there went, you know, six quarterbacks.
They flew off the board. Who was saying that 6 quarterbacks was spicy?
A couple of weeks ago, Chris Pizzignano went from the Giants Insider. He was convinced 6, and then as the week evolved over the course of the last 2 weeks, it's come to, I suppose it's been very evident that would be the case, but I certainly didn't think 6.
They were rousing the penthouse over them. We weren't in the penthouse at that stage.
So where do we think the Dolphins then are going to be going on this one?
I imagine cornerback. There's a lot of very good cornerbacks out there, and
there really is. Well, there's every cornerback.
They were touted for Graham Barton, the Duke centre, who's also played in a couple of positions across the offensive line, can play guard as well.
I don't know. Personally, I don't think that Tua needs more time. I think he needs better coaching. The defense needs to be able to get the ball more often in those key fourth quarters.
Where are they drafting a coach?
Yeah, I know. Well, is he? Yeah, I don't know. See, the head coach in there is good, but maybe, I don't know. Maybe you could do it a bit more tough love every now and again from the guys in the quarterback room. Now, maybe I'm basing it too much off.
D-line's an area you need there as well. Christian Wilkins out the door.
Yeah, to the Raiders. Yeah,
Keith, Dolphins fan, fair to trade down if Graham Barton not available. Question: NFL are fighting FamCam. They want the guys there on the stage getting the jersey. players are clearly are wanting to be with their family now. Yeah, that was a piece in which we spoke with Steve Weiss on Monday. Players and agents are very much aware that the scrutiny on the players in the green room and the intensity if they're not selected, and players are now being advised by their agents to stay at home, enjoy the moment with the family. All the hats are there, and they can have a much more enjoyable evening and await selection, and ultimately just record that moment.
If you don't want the intensity and the scrutiny, maybe playing in the NFL isn't the career choice for you.
Is it, how many? I wonder now how many of the 13 are still remaining in the green room.
Oh yeah, we need green room watch. Who was keeping tabs on
Mike
that?
McDaniel.
He's definitely wearing runners with his
So
suit.
Terry and
There's no way
Arnold's
he's
still
wearing-
there. JC Latham's still there. Player we haven't really talked about. Another offensive tackle who's still on the board. Quinion Mitchell. Darius Robinson, the guy we talked about with Steve Weiss the other day. Brian Thomas still available. Dallas Turner, is he gone yet?
Dallas Turner 2.
They just
I don't know what the over-under on Dallas Turner mentions was before the show started. I think we're up to about
we're-
274 at this
Go
stage.
well over there, you know.
Yeah. I think tomorrow will be an over-under on Bo Nix, won't it be, and maybe Michael Penix Jr. going to the Falcons at 8. But, looking forward to seeing getting the reaction from Colin on the Broncos.
Who are the NFL Network anchors for day 2 of the draft? There's a lot of the excitement gone out of the second round now after that one.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what the run of quarterbacks is and what's touted to be the next list of. Hunter, I still think the go offensive line has been touted for a while. The Dolphins need to.
Yeah, I think it's
bump up.
all line as well.
Go
Yeah.
D-line. I'm going to...
Cornerback.
Chop Robinson.
Chop Robbins.
He's going to Miami to chop them up, huh?
I'd love to know what Miami fans think about that one. I think it's
This guy's an athlete, though. He is fierce.
I think it's the right decision. I think somebody coming from a Big Ten school is the kind of
4.48.40.
I have to wonder as well, considering the last game the Dolphins played was in the closest game ever, and the Dolphins traditionally are a team which find it difficult to play on the road in the winter. The fact that they picked somebody who played it, who is a tough edge rusher who's played in the Big Ten Conference, might be something that they're conscious of playing in that cold weather.
The
They're
last
trying
time
to
we
address
saw
it.
a speedy edge rusher come out of Penn State, a guy by the name of Micah Parsons, that didn't work out too badly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the
So
guy
I think-
coming for Aaron Rodgers next season.
I think positioning that's a good pick. I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure who else was on there. I'm surprised that the cornerbacks haven't been snapped
think
up as
you might
much as
see
they
them
have
next.
been.
Where
I think the Eagles could do it a cornerback.
the
The Jaguars.
Again,
And the Jags as well, yeah.
all of what Steve Weiss called this, in fairness to him, all of what we saw in the early parts of the draft meant that you had a lot of really good defensive talent available at this stage.
Yeah.
So people clearly changing their sentiment. Dolphins widely expected to go O-line, but you got a premium position available. A guy you like in Chop Robinson, why not?
Keith's happy, Dolphins fan. Phillips and Chubbs will not start the season. Good pick.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Then
He's waited till 20 to 4 to
a good
see
night.
Dolphins pick, so I'm sure he'll be
it's Philly
satisfied.
first. I thought it was Jags.
So we're on the Eagles. Eagles, Jags, both potentially looking at cornerbacks here.
The Eagles. Do they need a running back, Brian? I can't remember. Do they need?
No, they seem to have done.
Oh, they've done well on that one. Okay,
I
cool.
don't know what you're referring to.
I'm glad I'm in the middle here.
Yeah.
No,
As am I.
Not even a trigger warning on that one. That's very unfair. Poor old Brian.
I know. I did feel sorry for that.
Roger is coming back up the stairs. Although he's been moving around, so it's no wonder he's wearing a pair of runners with a suit.
Well, Howie trade. Give us an out trade, Howie. Go on. Make it entertaining.
I'm interested to see if any trades are going to take place for the rest of the night. We've had 2 trades, and both of them were done by the same team. So it really hasn't transpired in what we expected.
The Vikings are the only good crack. They're trying
Only
to
go crack.
Yeah,
I don't think they're in the war room having the
I'd say they are. They're
Go on, trade that for the crack.
yeah.
Thanks for tuning in, Keith.
Cheers, Keith.
Keith's off the
Appreciate
bed.
that.
He's waiting for his Dolphins pick.
He's on
has
the
his
phone.
edge rusher.
What's he doing here? Is he trading it or is he talking to the player?
Well, he could be talking to the player.
Maybe it's the player.
Saquon Barkley
Could be
signed
ringing for the pizza at this stage.
I would say.
Yeah, that's an interesting bearing in mind. They traded Hassan Reddick, who was really effective for them over the course of the last 2 years. Didn't really have a stellar season compared to the previous year.
Yeah.
But gone to the Jets, something we should have called it earlier, that the Jets didn't necessarily have to go defence, and that's why.
You've just Kelsey gone as well, of course. You know, if you got Graham Barton available to you now.
Yeah.
Graham Barton, how would you like to be right in the middle of the tush push, having 20 people on your back? That's a great way to be like, that's a real welcome to the NFL moment before you
and
even
fill
play
a slot
game.
left by a Hall of Famer. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah. No pressure. Step in there and take over.
Yeah, I suppose I wasn't thinking that. You have the Kelsey replacement, all right. Even Jackson Powers Johnson maybe could be a player here.
you got other O-liners available as well. Of course, you have Tyler Guyton, who was another highly touted, another big unit. We were talking about Amarius Mims earlier. Tyler Guyton is another.
Pick us in.
Pick us in. So we'll.
I don't think we're going to have any more trades tonight, Connor. You've got.
Kind of Howie was our last hope, wasn't he?
Yeah. I guess he. Unless,
Even the chances of the Bills moving up now, it's probably going to fall for them if they do want a wide receiver. They still got Brian Thomas and A.D. Mitchell available.
Surely Cowboys move up. They go all in. Oh, will they not?
Again, they
They
probably
not
don't
find a
need
way.
to.
the only thing I could say with the Bills is that Arizona, well, they've taken the wide receiver, so it's not going to go there. Maybe the Bucks are considering a wide receiver, but then they brought back Evans. Packers have built a wide receiver room over the course of the last few years. There's no need looking at that particular list of teams coming down the line for the Bills to move up, but maybe they just want to just go over the top just to secure that particular player. We'll see.
I love how there's a graphic there added in 2024. Quarterback Kenny Pickett and running back Saquon Barkley. I wonder which one is the starter. No, probably not Kenny Pickett. Who do we think, guys, just sitting here now, can probably feel happiest with the business that they've done? Obviously, there are still a few teams, the more winningest teams that we haven't quite gotten onto yet. But I think, who is sitting here thinking, do you know what? I think we've done good work here.
I think the Vikings can be happy with what they've done.
Well, yeah, they've been aggressive from the start. I mean, we were saying that they're the only ones who kind of made two moves, but as well, I think they were two good players.
I would say that, I know it's popping on the screen, so it's probably one of them, but Jared Verse going to the Rams, Brendan Mundy just lost, Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
And he was touted as potentially, leapfrogging Dallas Torrent, never mind the fact that he was the third player to go. They at 19, not having to move up. I think the Rams will be very pleased with that.
I think both Patriots and Commanders will be happy that they got the guys they wanted as widely expected. I think the Bears will be happy. I don't think they would necessarily have expected Dunze to be available at 9 if he pans out the way a lot of people expect him to.
Malik neighbours.
And I think, as you say, there's an edge rusher for everyone in the audience. I think everybody who got an edge rusher who might not have expected to have one drop to them like that is probably happy. The Rams, as you say, I think that's a good call, Brian. I think they probably will be delighted with their work.
So what are we thinking? I'm going to go cornerback.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Terran Arnold.
It makes sense.
Yeah,
That secondary last year was
It was a disaster. They got picked on all over the place.
There are two very good.
34th in the league.
There are two very good cornerbacks still left on the board here.
Like when Baker's tearing you up, you got something very wrong going on.
The boos don't stop for Roger Goodell. You have to feel sorry for him, in fairness.
Have you seen his salary?
I didn't say how sorry you have to feel, to be fair. I think he just, Roger Goodell has mentioned the fact that the Eagles are playing their first game in Brazil.
I saw a piece today. I was very keen to see what time that game would kick off. They're suggesting it's going to be 11:15 local time here, because it's a 3-hour time difference with Brazil. Because the game would have to go at 8:50 in their time. It's kind of a nice time for us. Maybe not because the opening game is the night before and we might be up very late, but 11:15 sounds nice to have an NFL game.
Yeah,
It is.
Not so bad. That 2 hours early for a night game. It makes
you
a
kind of
difference.
teasing the all-nighter there? You just go straight through? Yeah.
Straight off the late and on to the NFL. What more would you want?
We're still waiting. They're going
making the pick for the Eagles from Australia.
Dan under.
So how do we feel about that Friday night football now?
I feel good because I'm changing to a job where I have weekends off now, so it means I can stay up late Friday night and not have to worry about having to get up Saturday morning.
Quinion Mitchell.
Quinion Mitchell,
First
yeah.
cornerback off the board. Guy in the green room as well. Everyone's going to be happy about that in Detroit.
I think you were mentioning, Connor, the last time we were talking about Quinion Mitchell, the fact that he's coming from
Small school.
Exactly, and you know, that's the kind of guy which in the right dressing room you can really kind of rile up and coach, and you're right. And I think Philadelphia is a decent landing spot.
City that loves an underdog.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's a kind of a, you can probably kind of build on the grit that is common in the stadium.
Will he be okay when Malik Neighbours is tearing him to shreds?
So it would be interesting actually. Now, will they be on the same side, or will they be maybe man marking each other, as it were? They probably will be.
Jalen Hyatt make that big second year jump.
Oh, yeah.
Will that be the game in Brazil? They might send the Giants out to Brazil and let that be the opening.
No.
Oh no, sorry, it's the Packers going to Brazil. That was already announced.
Yeah, already
Sorry.
confirmed, Shane. Come on.
I know.
It's getting late.
Keep up with the program.
We're on the Jags again, bearing in mind they did the trade. Is that the case?
Yeah, we are. We're on the Jags.
Yeah,
Who were touted to get Brian Thomas Jr. at 17, who might still be available for them. So it's highly little bit of business if that's what
Yeah.
they wanted and that's what they get.
I would have thought they would still would have went for a cornerback back up at the spot they were at. But maybe the longer they're sitting there, they might think that a wide receiver, somebody else, probably fresher for Justin Herbert to throw to, might not be a bad idea.
We're feeling the corners now. Let's give us a Terrion Arnold now.
Yeah. Well,
I'm done with edge rushers now. That we did a little burst there now.
We're looking for a run on corners now, are we?
Looking for the run
do
on
we,
the corner.
whole run
do
of
we
two.
need to find a cornerback to curse so you can move them down the draft
run
board
to the corner
5
shop.
spots?
Get to the corner shop. But you know what you're saying, Shane, about the Quinion Mitchell, the Toledo narrative there. It is interesting, given how Howie Roseman has traditionally been associated with picking off the best players from the SEC, going to the big schools, going to the guys he knows who can deliver in the big games, who've been playing in that pressure cooker environment.
He's also going to have to go up against the Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb. He's going to have an eye-opening start to his NFL career, bearing in mind.
Kool-Aid McKinstry's still on the board as well.
Yes, a lot of people were suggesting maybe 49ers were somewhere he might be an ideal fit.
Just on the 49ers, there's a lot of talk around the possibility of them trading out for Brandon Ayuk, but there was something that broke earlier, or that was suggested earlier, that Deebo Samuel might be on the not on the chopping block, as it were, but on the trading block. You think that that's something that has credit to it? Because, you know, obviously that cast of offensive talent is what really carried the 49ers to being, not only being in the Super Bowl, but being the team that probably should have won the Super Bowl. But, you know, we can...
There was a lot of conversations this afternoon that someone within the top 10 that wanted a wide receiver looking to make a trade, whether it's Deebo or whether it's Ayuk. You wonder where the 49ers come from coming up to that position. They just take another generational wide receiver. It was one of the top 3, and they'd happily let, like me and Noel had a conversation today. I'm not convinced that Brandon Ayuk is this worthy of a massive big trade and compensation. He's good, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's delivered to the extent of what 49ers fans would have expected overall.
Yeah, but
got owned by Trent McDuffie in the Super Bowl when it mattered most.
He'd be great for a team that's looking for a WR2 though. That needs that kind of explosive.
But he recognises himself as a WR1. That's ultimately
Yeah,
the problem.
I think that's
He's
the
expecting
problem.
that contract, which is justified in him being a WR1. I think the 49ers are recognising, yeah, you're good, you're very good in what you do within the scheme, but you're not number 1 for us. That's
Juwan
it's a tricky
Jennings,
one
who
there.
showed up for them
in the Super Bowl. He was probably going to be the MVP if it wasn't for the late heroics from Patrick Mahomes.
The pick is in here for Jacksonville. We're at 23 overall. We're heading into the final 8 left after this, or including this. So we're heading into the final stretch. But again, like,
I think we should propose to the NFL when it hits this time they should reduce it to 5 minutes per selection, allowing for people at 4 o'clock in the morning to.
well, only out of consideration for their international fans. I think that's fair enough.
Yeah, or bring the time forward.
Yeah.
Where are they going? Like, they do need, like, obviously Calvin Ridley's gone. You know, he's gone to the Titans. They thought they'd secure him. They brought in Gabe Davis. There's been a lot of talk to go for wide receiver. Wide receiver and cornerback were interested. Myself and Kieran spoke with the local analyst from Jacksonville recently. He was Celtic putting these two positions as marquee, cornerback or wide receiver, and you could see both scenarios depending on where they're comfortable going. I'm going to stick with the cornerback. I think that this is something that they need to resolve.
Who do you think they're going to take? Nate Wiggins is another name we haven't mentioned. A lot of people had him going to the Packers. 2 picks further down the board here, 25. Clemson corner still on the board.
Terry Arnold still on the board.
Kool-Aid, Terry Arnold still on the board. Of course,
there,
was widely expected to be the first cornerback to go.
I don't think Cooper DeJean goes as high, does he? Could Cooper DeJean be picked in this? I don't know if he's.
I don't
maybe
think
he's
with the others available, I don't think there's. We would have seen him go if anybody was.
Here we go. Here's Roger Goodell now for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Oh, yeah. Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver. You're right, Brian. And he's wearing sunglasses. Put that down. Put that down.
I think.
Shade watch. The shade index.
I think that's again. I'd be interested to hear Kieran's taking it, because he saw the Jacksonville's late season collapse probably more closely than any of us here. But I think it'd be interesting in whether picking a wide receiver at the top thing is just an extra piece of confidence in Doug Peterson to be an offensive coach who is creative, who can get the most out of young talent, but also confidence in Trevor Lawrence to be the franchise quarterback who, you know, he got Trevor Lawrence, when he's fit, he's very good. He's one of the best in the league. The problem was he was brought back from injury too quickly last year, and a bit like Liverpool this season, the wheels fell off the wagon a little bit too early, and they lost it.
A bit like Liverpool, if you don't have the scoring power toward the end of the season, it's not going to happen for you. And they're looking across at what's happening in Houston and going, look at the weapons that they've lined up around CJ Stroud. They're going for it.
But what struck me about Jacksonville's season, there was a game, I think the week before, because it was a Monday night game, I think in week 14, give or take, that was when Trevor Lawrence got injured against either the Browns or the Bengals. I think it was the Bengals. The week beforehand, it was a regular Sunday game. It was between the Texans and the Jags. It was billed, and I was really excited for it, as whoever won this game won the division. The Jags came in Houston, did the job. Defense kept CJ Stroud and co quiet enough. Trevor Lawrence came in and was excellent. So everything kind of collapsed after that, because they couldn't quite. Once the QB was gone, the talent kind of just drained a little bit, and I don't know whether it was an energy thing, or obviously there was a couple of injuries kind of building up as well. So I think maybe this pick is learning from that mistake and saying, look, we're going to make sure we have an extra weapon that can be used, that somebody else to rely on other than always Trevor Lawrence.
They tried and failed with other options as well, don't forget. Like they had, Treylon Burks hasn't worked out the way they would have hoped. Christian Kirk kind of was the guy and also kind of wasn't. Like they haven't really made the breakthrough there and put the person there, apart from Calvin Ridley when they had him, who could really make Trevor Lawrence sing and make his life easier for him.
Yeah.
But I think when you look at this move, though, I mean, you think if the Jags came in here looking for a wide receiver, to be able to make that trade down with the Vikings and still get what's considered the next best wide receiver outside the top three, looks like it could be a really great move for them there. And then they got themselves a nice little haul as well to keep going.
Yeah, look, I mean, they have a nice haul later on in the draft, and I'm looking forward to seeing these guys in action in Wembley later on this year.
I think the expectations as well for the Jags last year, and just bear in mind that they were at one stage were touted as potentially the 4th seed, 2nd seed. I mean, they went into that Bengals game on the Monday Night Football in November, in which Kieran was there on behalf of the show doing the media. Everyone was expecting them to run all over that particular Bengals team. The game went to overtime. The Bengals beat them. They went on the slide after that. I don't know whether the lofty expectations kind of caught up with them and they kind of got a little bit ahead of themselves, or smelling themselves, as we like to say, Conor, on the show.
Yeah. It's a good point. I mean, you look at the previous season that finished on a high as well, and look, we saw a couple of teams, the Giants obviously another one that happened to, where you were expecting them to make the next step, and instead it kind of came crashing back down to earth.
Yeah, I think only 4 or 5 teams from the divisional round the previous season actually returned to the playoffs last year. Interesting one there, just because there's been a speculation around Jets and Jags at Wembley on the 20th of October. I would probably agree with the date. I'm not entirely sure it's the Jets. We had been doing a little bit of digging Jets, so it was ruled out. But again, maybe people were trying to put us off the scent. But I certainly think that date is probably a viable date, aren't we? So Cowboys, It's a running back, isn't it? Because Jerry doesn't do things by halves. And
Blake Corum to the Cowboys.
Can they draft Ezekiel Elliott again?
Well, we did the 32 down to 21, and Kieran the nose on that one. And Kieran suggested they go take the Texas running back in Brooks and spoil the party in terms of everyone expecting no running backs to go in the first round, and they'll shock the board.
Well, with most teams, you would be betting against it, but with Jerry, who knows? You know,
Still got that CeeDee Lamb contract to get sorted as well, which is
still have the situation. It's ridiculous.
But they do need a running back, like whether it's this round or whether it's the next round. Bear in mind that Tony Pollard is gone.
Deuce Vaughn
is gone.
Deuce Vaughn will be
Probably
the man.
But they've been. I felt that the Cowboys have been very quiet this offseason, especially considering Jerry said they were going to be all in on it. They really haven't done much.
Very quiet. I was speaking to Brandon Laurie, who's a friend of the podcast, who does a Cowboys fan who lives in New Jersey naturally. And, you know, at that point when I was chatting to him, I think it was about 3 weeks ago, it wasn't they were very quiet. They'd done nothing. They signed no one. They re-signed a few players that kept on.
You could have listened to Jerry Jones and others in that organisation convince you that they were maybe one player away before last season. They're definitely not one player away this season.
Certainly not.
Particularly on the defensive side of the ball, I think. Now,
I think there's some offensive line work to be done here now for them
They
as well.
lost two to the Commanders. And
got picked on by the Packers. I mean, that playoff game was very illuminating.
Thomas Smith moving over to the left-hand side of the offensive line. But yeah, certainly holes there, which is why for a large part of the last month, various mock drafts had them essentially taking offensive. They're letting the clock tick down considerably here. I don't think we've seen it go beyond a minute and most of the night. So maybe they're hoping for someone to jump up. But
so what do we think then? I
think they go offensive line.
Yeah,
trading down, all in. We're not having a first round pick.
Too many holes there.
All in.
They need to correct it.
JC Latham still on the board?
No,
JC is long gone.
Tyler Guyton?
Yeah, Tyler Guyton's still out there, yeah.
And we're gonna. Oh, it's a trade. Here we go. The
Detroit Lions have traded up. The Detroit Lions.
Lions go for Terry Arnold.
So
we felt that he'll be on there. Yeah.
So where did Detroit trade up from? Where were they? 29.
So they moved up 5 spots. Be interested to see what the trade is.
I am surprised at that.
Well, they had to do something for the local fans.
Oh no! I a great move by Detroit. I think it's smart. They obviously have someone, and hopefully somebody in the room who
you could justify the Cowboys taking a running back more so the fact that they've dropped down essentially to the fourth last pick in the draft.
Is that it? So it's
got to be someone.
If it's 29th overall, a running back is better for Jerry Jones.
It just makes the conversation a bit easier because you can say, well, people tout him as a second round pick. He's gone at 29. It's not a big difference.
Plus, if he gets more picks, he can
see what kind of compensation he has.
He can bring in more players, which he doesn't have at the moment because he hasn't spent any money in free agency. Well, it's about very little.
They're giving away a tour. Yeah, okay. So they swapped the tour for the 7th. Tour this year, obviously next year's 7th, so it's not really a massive move. There's Dan Campbell in a nice blazer. I wonder, Aaron Mullally, friend of the show, big Lions fan, I imagine he's resting up. He has two young children.
Well, he might not be resting up then. He might well be watching the draft while he waits for one of them to fall asleep.
The War Room are looking happy anyway.
They're really feeling themselves
celebrating. Yeah, well, they're giving their home fans something to be happy about.
Yeah, I think the Connor's been calling all night. They have to give them somebody who's in the green room.
Yeah.
Trade up. Well, guess someone who's in the green room. Doesn't matter what particular position he is.
You.
They're going to roll out somebody no matter who it is.
The janitor. John.
275,000 people watching it. We were due to go to a break at this stage. Is it this pick or the next pick?
And we go after this one now. We'll wait till see.
The Green Bay Packers are on the clock. They have about 7 minutes left, but it'll be a while before they actually have their pick in. I'm looking forward to seeing what Detroit have done here.
I think it's going to be cornerback.
Taking some time. I think so too. I think cornerback. I'm thinking Terry and Arnold.
Yeah. So I actually wondered during the off-season if they'd make a move for L'Jarius Sneed.
Yeah.
So didn't materialise in the end. So and they could get a much cheaper option now that they'll have under control.
Been an issue for them for a while. You know,
They like to go against the trend. When, last year the linebacker with their second first round pick, they take
went
a
up
running
for
back.
Jahmyr Gibbs. People thought that was a reach.
They even thought Campbell was a reach. Their second first round pick. So, whilst we all think cornerback, they might go. The reaction of the room there, and the way they were kind of celebrating, kind of struck me as, is that the nature of a cornerback decision? The moving up forward?
Like they definitely someone didn't expect it there. So.
As well as I think it's Dan Campbell's room. They just get jacked up. They get pumped about anything. The coffee machine is working. Woo! Yeah.
I think no matter who Roger Goodell confirms as the selection here, the crowd are going to go absolutely bananas. And look, top of the rankings there, Daniel Jeremiah's board is Arnold. So Conor, you're kind of hitting on what you thought. I don't think they'll be getting too excited if it's an offensive guard. If going to it has to be cornerback. There's nothing really else there that strikes me as someone they go after. They're stacked at wide receiver. They just done a lot of contracts this week.
Yeah, it could be a good week to be a Lions fan. They spent a lot of money there over the last couple of days. But
the biggest crowd roar tonight is coming, Conor.
Roar of the Lions.
Brace yourself. We might have to wait to bring out a number of people for the pick, so we might have to be introduced to quite a few people before we hear the selection.
A little bit of theatre around some of these picks, of course.
Flag football. Sorry, I think they're promoting flag football.
Flag football player is going to make the pick, which is nice. Obviously, a big priority of the NFL's as well. Bring more people into the game, and particularly expand the game to a female audience. Flag football has been a key part of the NFL strategy to do that. We're going to see a lot more of that in this market. Incidentally, that's one to watch out for.
I'm looking forward to that in the Olympics in 2028. Flag football being added into that. Not only for the reaction of NFL players coming in. I just think it'd be fun to see what kind of international crews.
The reaction of the public who are used to watching Pacific sports, particular sports in the Olympics, and now all of a sudden have to cater for watching a bit of flag football.
Well,
Oops.
So we have the pick coming in now. With bated breath for the roar of the Lions.
Yeah.
Terry Arnold.
Yeah.
And he's in the room.
With the sunglasses
With
on.
the sunglasses and a bright pink suit. The colour of...
I think we can add the Lions to the list of teams who will be happy with the work they've done today. Because again, possibly a player that they never thought was going to be there. We see in the reaction in the war room and when they got it done. So I think it looks like they didn't think they'd have a chance to get him, and then suddenly there he
Didn't
was.
have to give up too much by the looks of it.
But again,
No,
I don't know...
If he pans out, it's not that much at all. They've given up.
Just on your point earlier, Conor, I don't know if he's the kind of player who, again, with the new special team system, the kind of person who will make plays as well. We've seen decisions around special teams, let's say, in Detroit either go fantastically well for them or backfire. So when they do need to do special teams, it's probably more important than it is in other squads for it to be right. So I think that's an important pick.
And for all that we talked so much about both the 49ers on defense across tonight, blocked extra point and a muffed punt is what ended up costing them the Super Bowl. Special teams for special players, as Jay Bell would say.
Yeah, the crowd are loving that.
Right, as Terry Arnold goes up to get the hug from Roger Goodell, it's probably now as good a time as any with the Packers on the board to take another break. We'll be back with you in just a couple of minutes' time on the Irish NFL Show.
You're in control. You don't do stress. You've enough other things to get on with. You know your sport and you know the odds, so you're not afraid to choose alternatives. That's why you bet with QuinnBet, featuring live streaming of Irish and UK horse and greyhound racing. So, here's to real choice, here's to the real punters. And real punters choose QuinnBet. QuinnBet, on mobile, app and desktop. We bet you'll love it. Register today at QuinnBet.com.
The Aer Lingus College Football Classic is back. Georgia Tech and Florida State University touch down in Dublin on Saturday, August 24th at the Aviva Stadium. Enjoy the full American football experience with cheerleaders, marching bands, tailgating, pep rallies, as well as an exciting halftime show. Don't miss out on one of the biggest sporting events of the summer. Tickets on sale now at Ticketmaster.ie.
For everything to go right on the day, takes hours and hours of dedication by an entire team. The early morning starts, the hard-working stable hands, the trainers, instinct, drive, passion, the fearless jockeys, and last but by no means least, a bit of good luck on the day. QuinBet, proud sponsors of UK and Irish racing.
Welcome back to the Irish NFL show on our Draft Night Live coverage from the Clayton Hotel Laps Quay in Cork. We've just had the Packers with the 25th overall pick select Jordan Morgan, tackle from Arizona. Noel, as you were saying, makes perfect sense with David Bakhtiari, unfortunately, having to depart the team, on his day, one of the best lineman in the NFL. Unfortunately, injuries had slowed him down on the contract he was on. It was always likely he was going to be cut, and that's what happened. This looks like the guy that they're viewing as the tailor-made replacement. A slight surprise where he's drafted, given other linemen had been graded higher in the draft, but Packers typically don't make mistakes with those kind of picks.
No, look, when it comes to all linemen, I mean, the Packers generally get it right. As you said, Bakhtiari's gone, you lose Runyon, so you have maybe a couple of gaps there on that line that need to be fixed. In terms of wide receivers, they're well set there with a young core. They've made moves at running back, so you still want to make sure that Jordan Love has obviously the best opportunities he can to work with what's around him, and if you can just solidify that line again and start giving him that protection to continue, then yeah, I think it's kind of an expected move from the Packers, nothing surprising by it, and I think it's a good move for them. So we'll see how it develops. And
again, it bears out, Brian, Daniel Jeremiah seemed to be one of the winners from the mock draft. He was the one who was calling all the linemen, and he was right.
Yeah, well, as I said, I was on the coverage in which he did last week, where it was a Zoom call and we were all given the option to go on, and I didn't get a question, and it was very intriguing, very significant to see some of the snippets of information he was alluding to on various different teams. He was literally on the ball for large parts of the mock draft, and I know he did his final mock draft this week, so things might have moved around slightly, but in terms of positional needs, he got a large percentage of them right. This was one that we felt that was inevitable. We had done the piece a few weeks ago, Kieran, and suggested it, and I think Packers fans have recognised that the offense is far superior to maybe even when Aaron Rodgers was there over the course of last year. Taking in so many young wide receivers, put them together, fantastic nucleus of a team going forward. And now they recognise they've got the quarterback of the future. It's about securing him and putting players in the position to make sure he's fully protected.
They hit on their tight end as well, not a premium position, obviously, but not one that they needed to address here. Cornerback was the one potential area of need that had been called out elsewhere, so maybe slight surprise, but with one or two of the top prospects, Quinion Mitchell and Terrion Arnold already off the board, maybe they decided that discretion was the better part of valor here. Beef up that protection in front of Jordan Love. The Bucs, incidentally, have also picked, and we're waiting for the NFL coverage to come back from break to find out who that selection is. Maybe let's look at some of the options there for them. Noel, there was probably a need there at linebacker, a need there at pass rusher as well. Potentially they're another one who might be in the market for a pass rusher and might be quite happy with the way things have panned out in the draft so far in that regard. Still a couple of well-graded names available for them should they choose to go in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, a pass rusher is a position of need for them there, and you talk about it, the draft has just fallen in a way that a lot of these premium guys have moved down. So for them, they could have an option or two there that they may not have expected. And yeah, I mean, I think probably looking at it, that's where I would kind of guess it would go. Again, we've been surprised once or twice tonight, so who knows? But
And we have been talking, Shane, about the race for the NFC South, one of the more slow-moving races in the NFL over recent seasons. But with the Falcons where they are now, with Kirk Cousins having surprisingly gone, and this was the big early surprise in the draft that they drafted Michael Penix, the Washington quarterback, to go straight in there as Kirk Cousins' presumptive backup and successor there. They're well geared up. So Bucs got to keep pace here.
Yeah, but it's difficult to try and figure out exactly what way they're going to approach that, because you could go for a cornerback or somebody in the safety position or the secondary who is trying to, I guess, kill any form of aerial attack, because of course the Buccaneers have to neutralize anything. But I don't know. I think finding a way to really bolster your offensive options is the way to go here. The offensive lineman seems to be the flavour of the night. I think if there's a wide receiver or a tight end that they can bring in to really, I guess, broaden what kind of weapons that they have to work with, but because there is a bit of an arms race going on now with what the Falcons are doing. With, I don't know what way the Panthers might eventually start growing. And of course, they're still building with Bryce Young, who does have a lot of potential, even though last year was a bit of a disaster. So I don't know. I certainly think whether it's done here in the draft, whether it's done in the second or third round, or whether it's done later on in free agency, I think a wide receiver who is particularly quick, somebody who can make the difference in those divisional games is the way to go here.
Still a couple of interesting teams to come up as well as we're kind of rounding the last fence here on the first round. We've got the Cowboys who traded back Bills, a team that a lot of people will be looking on who may potentially take a wide receiver. The guy that they'd been most closely linked with was A.D. Mitchell, who's still available to them should they decide that he's the way to go. Ravens still to come. Jordan Morgan was the tackle that they'd been linked with. Packers have already taken him. Niners and Chiefs, of course, bringing up the rear. We shall see who they'll take as Roger Goodell takes to the dais to announce the pick of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 26th. Graham Barton. Yeah, we talked about him a couple of times. The Duke offensive lineman, interior offensive lineman who's played centre and has the versatility to play guard.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Baker Mayfield had a very fruitful season. He's obviously got the contract. Being Mike Evans back, I mean, there was something we joked earlier on when people were suggesting this was the team which did so much so quickly and so well in the offseason in terms of getting the nucleus of the team back. And I think Baker Mayfield proved last year that he's not a spent force in the league. He's probably just landing in difficult situations, and they've secured him. I mean, this seems to be the team of the night when we've spoken about. Teams are recognising that they've got a quarterback there that can play in the system and play for the team, and it fits and makes sense to what you do ultimately try to protect them. And we've seen the Bucs in particular with players retiring and various different injuries over the last year. That's, again, it's the most sensible thing to do.
Do you remember at one stage in the season how we were remarking on the fact of how many backups were playing, and we saw the Tyson Bagents and the Tommy DeVitos getting their runs out. Such was the rate of attrition among quarterbacks. So beef up the protection seems to be the trend of the night. It's amazing we didn't see it coming.
Yeah, I suppose it is amazing, especially considering that last year was the year of the backup. I don't know whether as we get into the season that does open up opportunities for the likes of Mac Jones or even Justin Fields, who are in backup situations to end up becoming starters somewhere else. But that's probably looking less likely because it's quite clear that pass protection is something that teams are valuing more now, and it's because it's become a more passing league. I think more and more teams are realizing that extra 0.3 of a second that you can give your quarterback to make the right decision can be key in these games.
Cracking through it here, Shane. Cardinals are on the clock and have already made their selection, and Roger Goodell has some pep in his step here.
They made the pick immediately.
Yeah. Kool-Aid. No. Darius Robinson, Missouri edge rusher.
Yeah, we spoke about that last night actually on the show, where I was suggesting that if they were to trade out from 4 to 11 or whatever the particular scenario was, that they may shift gears and go defense with the second pick or even with the fourth pick, depending on the nature. If they didn't move out, obviously they took Marvin Harrison Jr. So it kind of doesn't surprise me that haven't been where they are, and I thought maybe we might see some kind of trade with the Cardinals and giving them more. But again, we spoke here that they've 11 picks in this draft. They don't necessarily have to be trading out. It makes sense. They've had this need for quite a couple of years now to try to get a player. And obviously, the Watt experience didn't work out properly. He retired since, and this one it seems like a nice fit.
The most important thing here is I make it that Darius Robinson was the last player left in the green room to be selected, so nobody will go home
empty-handed.
There's one for everyone in the green room.
What I think is important, and look, obviously, if we're watching a first round, any team that is picked twice in the first round, their fans are going to go happy. Fair enough. But what I think is important about what the Arizona Cardinals are doing here is not only have they got a fantastic wide receiver who, as Noel said earlier, was probably one of the best players in the draft, full stop. But I think this guy, Darius Robinson, has just the kind of hunger I think is needed to really compete in that division. I was talking earlier about how the Seahawks have to deal with the Rams. The Cardinals have to deal with the same thing, and I think he's a player that can really make the difference.
He's one of these guys, and this is often the case, who turned up at the Senior Bowl and showed out, was one of the best players on display, won rave reviews, turned a lot of people's heads. A lot of people went back, started looking at his tape again. Was another one we were talking about with Steve White, Brian. White himself obviously is a Missouri alum, and knew him well, had spoken to him, spoke well about what a leader he is, big personality, guy with huge confidence in himself. When people started kind of giving him pop and talking to him, he was saying, I've always been this good. It's just that you've only noticed for the first time. This is a guy who seems primed to make impact, and a lot of people really liked and talked himself into the first round and played himself into the first round and has got his just rewards.
Yeah, and I just note on John Gannon, because obviously he got a lot of criticism with the Eagles the year in which he was defensive coordinator. He obviously losing the Super Bowl, but again, there's many a team now who seems to lose the Super Bowl to the Kansas City Chiefs. They went there under a bit of scrutiny, a bit of pressure. We saw the opening press conferences, and by and large, the team really played from last year, and in particular on defense. There were certain games at the start of the season where the defense held up, and I think it's a case now of just trying to put more additional kind of players that can have immediate contribution. You would expect that, judging by what, as you said, Steve White was saying during the week, he can go in, hit the ground running, and these players have effectively
They had a
come in from day one.
sneakily good draft as well last year. You know, they were probably ranked, I think, the most talent poor team in the NFL on most people's lists. Brought in some fresh talent, plug and play, that started to roll for them. You know, started the season obviously with Kyler Murray injured. You know, had to kind of figure out their way around that one, and got some stuff going on.
But what was
We have a trade. There we go.
So we have a trade.
The Chiefs are on the clock.
The Chiefs have traded with Buffalo Bills.
Oh, interesting. Last time the Chiefs traded with the Buffalo Bills, they got Patrick Mahomes.
Or did we get that wrong? It popped there. Maybe we might have jumped the gun there.
Yeah,
I don't see that now.
No,
you heard it here. No, we're here. Sorry,
we got it right. They just took time to update this schedule. The Chiefs are on the clock.
I don't know whether, from Buffalo's point of view, I don't know if that's a case where they feel that they have someone they really want to, they can get anyway, or whether they just are really desperate for lower round picks because they know they probably have to shed off more talent that's already on the roster anyway to try and get under the cap.
If you're talking about dueling for wide receivers here, like the three that were still touted to go in the first round, Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell and Lad McConkey are all still on the board. So does it come down to you didn't get the guy you want? Does it come down to I'll take any one of those three at this stage? Thanks very much.
As Brian Thomas Jr. gone, he has.
Brian's gone, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I think that's the guy Buffalo wanted, and I think they were probably expecting him to stay on that long.
I think the Bills are reckoning. I'm going to repeat what Connor said, but they probably, as you said, they're sitting there. They probably recognise that, like, realistically, the Ravens aren't taking a wide receiver, the 49ers aren't taking a wide receiver, the Cowboys certainly aren't taking a wide receiver. We can move back to 32 now. We're comfortable with whatever one lands in our hands come 32.
So who do we think the Chiefs are targeting then?
No, the Chiefs is an interesting dynamic because they're coming up. Our back is
Worthy's still there, A.D. Mitchell's still there, as I said. Lad McConkey.
Any particular cornerback that we still feel is worthy of selection?
Well, the Clemson guy, what's
Cooper
his name?
DeJean.
Nate Wiggins is still there. Cooper DeJean is still there, yeah.
Yeah. No, again, that's because I was based on the fact I felt that they would go cornerback, but maybe they go wide receiver. Maybe they decide that they want to come up and Worthy is worthy of coming up a few places to take him.
They wouldn't go for an O-lineman now that there's been a run on them. Would they have moved up for a Tyler Guyton or someone?
We didn't get an opportunity. We didn't get an opportunity to speak of our selections.
I thought the point half the point of this is just to make anybody who is up late think that we were just wearing these all the time. They're just tired and we're hallucinating that we were wearing shirts earlier.
No, we certainly were wearing shorts.
We did the big wardrobe change.
Yeah.
No expense spared on the Irish NFL show.
Color coded for our team.
Yeah, no, it was. In fairness, it was sent in to us by the logoshop.ie, which is based out in Lucan. The color coders. This is Patriots red, by the way. I'm going in the 80s style. If someone was laughing at me for being old fashioned, I'm really going with the old colours. And
that was a Giants retro old style red jersey.
So we have the Giants blue and Bears navy, and I think. Are we all, now that we're wearing our team colours, I imagine that there is a sense of hope now going into the next season. I imagine particularly for the Bears because it landed really well for them. They didn't have to make any tough decisions at wide receiver. They got who they wanted at number 9, I think.
Yeah, now for me anyway, I mean, I think it's the perfect day for them. These are the picks we wanted, or I wanted, and they seem to have fallen to the Bears without having to do anything to get them. So I imagine Connor's probably the same, but for me,
likewise,
it's happy days.
Yeah, it's all great until we actually start playing games. But
right now we get to live with the hope and the happiness of that. We'll worry about on the field in a few months.
No, but I mean, if you'd been putting a to-do list in front of Ryan Poles, you would have said, get the weapons, get the infrastructure, give this guy every chance possible to succeed and be the player that we hope he can be. No argument with what's been done.
But what a job. Just on Ryan Poles, I mean, you look back at that trade last year with the Panthers and what a trade that's turned out to be. And I mean,
you look at. I mean, we're talking about the trade. If Caleb Williams pans out, we'll be looking at that touchdown pass that Davis Mills threw in the last game for the Houston Texans and the 2-point conversion that Lovie Smith
And
as
that-
one of
and
the
that-
ultimate sliding doors moments in
that Lovie
NFL
Smith
history
statue needs
for
to go
both
to a new
franchises.
stadium.
Yeah, at both stadiums. You get
what-
one in Houston and one in Chicago.
amazing for a man who took the Bears to the Super Bowl. The best thing he ever done for us was when he was head coach elsewhere.
Yeah.
But let's jump into the DeLorean for a second, because when that trade was made and the Panthers took Bryce Young, were you thinking, okay, well, we have a really good opportunity to pick in the top 10 next year? Did you thought the Panthers would boom out? I don't think anybody really expected it would be number 1 pick,
Not
but did
one,
you think
not
it would be a
one.
top 5?
I thought it'd be high. I didn't think 1.
But you were trading to have the capital to probably trade up to get Caleb
Yeah.
Williams.
You were
Justin
giving
Fields
yourself
did
options
Fields
if you
pan
needed
out.
to, yeah.
Now they ended up getting just Caleb Williams and having another top 10 pick, which I don't think is what they would have expected.
Because I remember when the Bears were struggling, they had that Thursday night game against the Panthers and kind of they dealt with them pretty quickly. And that was I imagine that was a key game for them as well. That was only at week 4, I think.
Jared Dow is suggesting that Nate Wiggins, the quarterback from Clemson, may be the
Chiefs
the
pick,
here.
replacing L'Jarius Sneed, who they lost.
It's amazing how the crowd is cleared out after the Detroit Lions guy was picked. I think maybe the trade with the Cowboys had nothing to do with anything else. It's just the Detroit police being like, listen, these guys want to go home. Get it over with."
Last orders in the Detroit Inn.
Have you no homes to go to, lads? Have we no homes to go to? What time is it now?
Yeah.
4.
It's 4:30, yeah.
Time is just a human concept. It's granted.
The sun will be coming up shortly.
I think we took to wait a couple of seconds now for it to.
And the Cowboys are
pick.
coming up next, and we'll go back to that conversation of what they do, because a lot of these offensive line guys are off the board now,
Yeah,
essentially.
you've got Cowboys,
Maybe they can
Ravens,
take that running
Niners,
back for you now.
Bills.
Well, yeah, that could end up being a good move for the Bills. If it is a wide receiver they want, they could drop back those few spots and
If,
still get them.
if the Chiefs
didn't
go
catch-
cornerback here, they get their choice of a couple of potentially
I didn't catch what
good guys.
was given up in the trade in terms of further down the draft between the Chiefs and the Bills. Did anybody
missed
catch
that
that?
too.
Actually, nor did I,
They
actually,
didn't
to be
release that information, yeah.
It's not released
What
yet.
about McConkey? Is McConkey a serious player here at some stage? Wide receiver. A lot of people tout him as a second, maybe a late first. Now,
We're just waiting for selection here.
Xavier Worthy.
Hey, there we
The
go.
combine hype was real. Who knew? Xavier Worthy, who ran the fastest 40 at the combine and one of the fastest 40s we've ever seen.
touting.
When that's exactly what Mahomes wants. Somebody from the Big 12 who is very fast and who is an elite prospect wide receiver.
Yeah, they're looking for Tyreek Hill 2.0 here.
I already felt they
Hello.
did really well in free agency in terms of bringing in Hollywood Brown as a free agency acquisition for 1 year. I mean, the deal itself was fantastic, and you know he's going to have an immediate impact. There's your deep threat now.
I'm not sure the Chiefs would necessarily have expected that they'd get the receiver they wanted in the first round.
But interesting then if that's the case, that the Bills didn't see him in their high end, because we're talking about the Bills taking a wide receiver, and yet they trade up to take Worthy.
Or did the Bills trade it thinking that the Chiefs wouldn't take a wide receiver, and the Chiefs took a wide receiver anyway?
Or as Connor said, maybe they have 2 or 3 in mind and they think, look, whichever one we get.
Maybe
we're
they
happy
wanted
with.
McConkey or Mitchell, or would have taken any one of 3.
So we're on to the Cowboys.
We're on to the.
This is a bit of a mystery now,
Yeah,
because
'cause I would have said O-line earlier on, but I mean, you just kind of look and see who's there.
You never really know what the Dallas Cowboys do. Trade
I
down.
have to say though, if I'm the Bills and the Chiefs of all teams offer me a trade, I'm like, if there's a player that they like that they want to go and get,
I want him.
the hell I'm going to give them the opportunity to take him.
helping the Super Bowl
Let them
champions
sit
go
at 32.
The pick is in here for Dallas, by the way. We are.
the
Dallas has-
leading competitors in the AFC
could
want
say-
to make a trade with you, and I'll take that.
Yeah.
You could say here that Dallas has turned in its pick. There we go.
Hey.
Wedging in a Dallas Turner joke as late as I can. And how slow the penny dropped there as well, I think, is reflective of
The time.
the dropping levels of caffeine in the system.
I think you need to give us a bit of a leeway there, Shane. You know, it's 4:30 in the morning.
Are we?
There was a 20-second time delay. It was like the joke travelled across the Atlantic there.
Was that the same as the Sky Sports stroke NFL Game Pass?
Are we building a new
time delay that we were made aware of earlier? We should
exactly.
New Great Wall of Dallas about to be built here? Is the cornerstone on the way?
Here comes the running back of the future, David Brooks in a shock.
Ezekiel Elliott 2.0.
Ezekiel Elliott.
Oh.
I'm just looking at the offensive tackles that are left in terms of the highest rankings. Like a lot of them are gone off the board. Tyler Guyton was one that was, he's still there. Offensive tackle 6 from Oklahoma.
Jackson Powers Johnson was another one.
He'd be very
Predicted maybe
interesting,
late
all right,
first round, possibly early second round.
There we go. Jeez, we had a space cowboy there. Did you see that? He was in the full space suit.
I think of late the Cowboys have been a bit more selective in terms of going with the right thing. So I wouldn't, it's been a while since we said that's Cowboys for you. But I think he's dropped it quickly. Have a look.
Goodell fumbles the card.
Oh my God!
Gets it on the first bounce.
And now he's just pointing at people.
It's delightfully low tech as well with the cards and the runners and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
I do enjoy that aspect of it.
You got to keep some kind of.
No? Tyler Guyton.
Tyler Guyton.
Yeah. One of the last remaining of the highly touted offensive linemen expected to go in the first round has indeed gone.
What's about the ratio now of offensive linemen who have gone and?
What's the over-under? There's a 10.5.
Yeah, but I wonder in comparison to previous drafts whether it has gone up. I know we were saying earlier about the fact that last year was the year of the backup and more teams are realising the need to protect what they have in terms of the signal caller. So
it's a leading trend that I think it's reflective of what Connor said earlier about the amount of quarterbacks, your first team or quarterback who's been injured last year, and it was the year of backup. It was the year of the backup, in particular, second half of the season, and a lot of that's down to injuries on the offensive line and the interior of the offensive line, getting players back and getting an abundance of players available to them. And the Cowboys have been ravished in free agency with players going to the Commanders, so it makes total sense.
Called out, and I'm not able to attribute this, unfortunately. I've forgotten the name of the NFL reporter who called this out, but there is the mirror effect as well. So once you see the bigger defensive tackles, and we pointed some of them out earlier who were getting paid, and that increased focus on getting pressure through the interior, you need to counter that as well. There's the response, and then there's the response to the response.
Yeah.
Everybody looking happy with themselves in Dallas.
Oh, the cheer squad are out as well.
Baltimore Ravens, and you touched on it earlier, Connor. This defensive savvy type of team.
They love them a cornerback down in Baltimore, and they have their pick of them now. I think Nate Wiggins is still available for them. What do we say? Cooper DeJean is still there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to be. You'll have to be thinking to be leading defense. The pick is in. They haven't they're not hanging around. So we're on to the 49ers thereafter, and the Bills to wrap up the first round. Anything that you think may be a surprise here in a particular way that they may go?
As in terms of what Baltimore might do here.
I'm working on the assumption they're going to go defense, but then that could spring a surprise that they did even an offensive tackle.
I'm not quite sure. I mean,
do you see any tackles that are left that would be on now?
Well, the one somebody had talked about it. It's arguably way too late now, but the Texans might look to trade back into the first round.
Yeah.
But clearly they're comfortable that whoever they wanted to fall into the second will be available for them in the second.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure the Texans are in such a great need now. Again, if it was 10 picks earlier, then they might have been considering it. Maybe they got told no. But so I think looking at what's left on the board here for
no quarterbacks have now for anybody to make a serious jump up as well.
Johnny Newton, the Illinois
defensive tackle there.
Is another one that was well talked about in the run up.
to try to put an offensive line to protect, give Derek Henry an extra avenue to get the breakthrough. It's going to be an interesting year seeing Derek
You'll be
Henry.
looking at Kingsley Suamatia. How do we pronounce that?
I tried it last week. I'm not going to. I'll let you have a go at that.
We'll go Suamatia. I don't know. No, BYU tackle.
You think they just kind of at this stage would leave Roger out on the podium, just have someone run out with the car to him?
Yeah, crack through them. Not the way the Oscars where they do like a bunch of the technical awards, like when we get to the last 3 or 4 picks,
Do it all together.
wrap it all up.
Yeah. We've got 6.
In fairness, if we're talking about drawn out awards ceremony, we definitely don't want to compare it to the Oscars. You know, people because then we have to have picks giving their own speeches. I want to thank my mom, my dad, God, all those kind of thing.
6.5 minutes left on the clock for the 49ers, so we're moving nicely along on their in terms of them making their pick. Again, another team that can go many away. You know, packed.
Yeah, I think. I mean, one of the main needs for the 49ers, and I know we're probably jumping ahead a little bit now because we're still waiting to see what Baltimore has done. I don't know if they're struggling to reach Maryland on the phones, but
I think Rogers coming out of his own.
Oh, here we go. I'll leave the 49ers till afterwards. Running Roger is back.
I like the way. I think he's certainly slowing up this evening.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
Nate Wiggins, the cornerback. I think that's a good pick. I think he's a good player, and I think right now there's a lot of people in San Francisco that's quite annoyed because I think that's who the San Francisco 49ers are lining up for the next pick, because the cornerback is an area which they need addressing. I think their main area is, apart from offensive line, our cornerback, and their offensive line is pretty good. But I mean, in the same way that Manchester City keep buying new midfielders every year, the San Francisco 49ers keep getting more O-linemen to put into that lineup. So that's probably where they're going to go now that Nate Wiggins has been taken off the board. But you're never really quite sure how the 49ers might try this. I mean, they also might be the kind of club that would get more value if they traded out, but I don't know how many people are looking to really trade up right now.
At this stage, you probably don't have too many options for that, or any options.
I think we're just going to see it play out now. Essentially, it's 49ers will just pick at this what they believe to be the best player in the board, and then ultimately the Bills will take one of the wide receivers left remaining on the list.
Is there a chance that the San Francisco 49ers take a wide receiver, considering all the conversation around Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel I was talking about earlier?
Consensus pick for them was Lad McConkey.
Yeah, several mock drafts even this week had McConkey going there, and there was obviously a conversation whether he was a second round pick or whether he was a late first, but consistent name that kept cropping up. We spoke about it there a couple of weeks ago. Someone that potentially could make that jump into the first round.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that.
For the last 5 seasons in the NFC Championship game, I mean, the demands are there from 49ers fans to be essentially back in the Super Bowl every year, and obviously getting over the line, and it just hasn't been the case just yet. But they're certainly letting the clock tick down. You wonder, are they hoping that someone jumps up from the second round and takes the pick off them?
Still hopeful of getting to bed by 5 o'clock.
So I'm just going back here of the draft board that Nola's brought in. Michael Penix Jr. was 52nd on this list, and he went 8th.
It's the most, for me, it's the most surprising selection of the night.
Oh, it is.
Was that a great moment?
I hadn't heard anybody say that.
No, not one. And I don't know whether the Falcons as a team are just that kind of good at really keeping things in, because again, they were very open about talking to Bill Belichick, but they ended up going with
Raheem
Morris. Anyway, I don't know whether they seem to be greater masters at the old smoke and mirrors, trying to make people think we're doing this. You know, a team that's been a bit more difficult to read. I'm not quite sure.
They only brought in Penix for a full evaluation 2 weeks ago, and we spoke about it in the podcast, but we felt it was like they're bringing him in to evaluate him because they recognise someone will want them, will want to jump up to what do they believe is the trade value for him.
Yeah. I mean, the same way that there were plenty of teams who knew they were, like, I all of the quarterbacks that the Washington Commanders evaluated, but I guaranteed that it was between 2. But they brought in a few of the other guys as well. You know, there's a lot of that happens during draft season anyway, so it's easy to overlook that kind of thing. But it's actually for them to actually select Penix Jr. to sit in behind Kirk Cousins. To entirely different situation than when myself and Colin were in Wembley last season watching
Desmond Ridder.
I was going to say Derek Ritter, Desmond Ritter, just have absolutely.
He's in Arizona now, backing up Kyler Murray.
Oh, well, Jesus. But it's made the difference between Kyler Murray and Desmond Ritter. Desmond Ritter, that day anyway, in Wembley was completely out of ideas, not an ounce of creativity. I don't know whether it was just stepping on English soil that stopped it out of him, but he was very bad. He didn't have a good away record anyway. So I think, again, if you're an Atlanta Falcons fan, this season is looking a hell of a lot more exciting.
I think to be Falcons fans out there this evening, that we could have gone another player to really bump up this team. We could have got another defense.
Had an impact player for now, but look.
But I don't think so. They selected a quarterback in the top 10 and paid a lot of money for it. But they're in a weird situation that they're probably not going to create a quarterback controversy in the way that there could be one in Pittsburgh, let's say.
And that's because of the contract and the nature of what they've done to get Kirk Cousins in. And bearing in mind, there's still a tampering kind of conversation, which could potentially lead to picks next year. So
yeah, that's a fair point.
They're still hanging in there, the 49ers kind of.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that.
Yeah,
is there any sense that somebody could sneak back into the first because that wide receiver they want is still there? 49ers trade out of it as they maybe don't need that. See that as an area of need in the way that others
possibly
do.
Carolina, who are picking first in the second round, they could do with some help for Bryce Young.
No, pick is in for the 49ers, never mind.
The speculation was nice.
When Ian Rappaport comes on, he usually, because he's essentially telling you who the pick is.
Pretty much knows, yeah.
I didn't catch what Ian Rappaport said there. We were too busy praising how he knows things that we didn't bother listening.
Because he listens, Shane.
I like the banner there. Lost to the Chiefs in Super Bowl, just to remind everybody.
Reached NFC Championship in 4 of 5 last seasons.
Wow, it's a remarkable history there.
I think they're already starting to evaluate what's going to happen tomorrow night in the opening picks of the second round, which kind of says a lot around where they know there's nothing going to happen here in the next 15 minutes in terms of a trade.
Interesting. Are we all staying up to do the same tomorrow? Thanks to everybody who's still staying up with us, by the way. I don't know who managed to last the course. I imagine a lot of people probably decided to leg it to bed once their team was done and over with. But yeah, I don't know. I think I might give... See, it's handy for me now because the Patriots are picking third, so I can see the Patriots pick anyway, and it's not too late. I'm not hanging on too long. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Irish Jag is selecting for the Jags. He's doing their third day pick.
Oh, and that'd be great.
He put a comment out. He may have to go to bed early tomorrow night to be in position to be ready for the pick. And Jared was obviously back and forth for him, but Jared's touched on it there with. We hope he gets an easy, nice name to select, which is not always the case coming to later rounds. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. He might be going over time and time again, like as if he's doing a play or reading a book in school. So it'd be interesting to see. But great for him, great for the Irish Jags to see the name being selected this side of the world.
It's great. It's probably the most involved an official member of official Irish fan group has ever been in a draft. It's incredible how these things are kind of progressing on. Here we are with the 49ers. Ricky Pearsall from Florida. So take a receiver. And we're probably expecting another receiver now for Buffalo.
But not one that many expected him.
No,
I heard his name mentioned a couple of times, but
no, not
springing a surprise on this one. Oh, that's a nice catch there.
Oh, yeah, there's one excellent catch.
Oh, he took such a whack. The highlight reel is but the highlight reels are
selling it.
This is the part I love of the draft, when you go and look at the players your team selected and you only watch the good stuff. And
you touched on it there, Shane. I think it wouldn't be against the law of averages. They would take a wide receiver and just... why not go? Let's go again. But the question tomorrow would be, okay, they're taking a wide receiver in the first round. Are they going to trade out Ayuk or Deebo potentially?
Well, it's not putting more pressure on, or at least it's some form of admission that Ayuk. I mean, they're putting a piece of the puzzle here with Samuel Ayuk and Kittle on there. But I mean, like, one of those is going. Samuel or Ayuk, probably Ayuk are on their way out. Do we have a trade alert?
we have the Bills trading out of it. Panthers trade back in.
Panthers trade back in.
Oh,
Right, wow.
Good night.
What did I say?
Thanks very
They're,
much.
now that is technically moving up one place.
It was you, Shane. Sorry, but they did trade back into
That is technically the Panthers moving up one place, but obviously there's a wide receiver that they want, and the Bills don't.
Or the Bills think that.
So the Bills will be selecting first tomorrow night because the Panthers do have the first pick.
The first pick and the second, so they're moving up one slot. But it seems that the Panthers likely have either a receiver or a tackle that they prefer.
Or are they thrilled in their room there? So they do seem to have someone they're excited about. You think that has a wide receiver excitement?
So they swap. So basically,
the
Panthers move one and
the fifth round.
I mean, if this isn't the wide receiver that's picked by the Panthers, that's a decent trade from the Bills' point of view. But I think the Bills really need a wide receiver. There was also, in fairness, they have a few spots they need as well. They also need an edge rusher. But the Bills, not the Panthers. So
Panthers for me are going to pick a wide receiver. We spoke about the lack of players available.
Yeah, I mean they need skill position players badly.
This is McConkey, is it?
Pick is in. The final pick is in, folks, of the first round of the draft.
If you're a Carolina Panthers fan and you went to
Mitchell, I'd say.
Yeah, if you're a Carolina Panthers fan, you probably didn't stay up to watch most of this.
and then you're going to wake up tomorrow morning and go, oh.
You got a first rounder. Congratulations. The Buffalo Bills haven't. So we're just waiting for the last one now.
Yeah, and if you're a Panthers fan, Shane, you were watching the Bears pick Caleb Williams, your pick as well, which rubbed salt in the wounds.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like...
And they probably would have got a haul if they had him in there, because if they had the Bryce Young...
Yeah, and that had worked out, they'd have been... Just
in terms of what our hopes are for the Panthers, because we saw a couple of years ago when the first overall pick was chosen in Jacksonville. We saw... Oh, it's late. Not Justin. I always get Justin Herbert and the Jacksonville quarterback Trevor Lawrence. When Trevor Lawrence was picked, and obviously it was the Urban Meyer disaster, effectively. But you know, they brought in a good head coach. They spent money on players. They started rebuilding a solid base, and it came on to what is a pretty good team. The first year of Bryce Young's tenure in Carolina has not been very good. And maybe not so much down to the coaching as much as Urban Myers was in Jacksonville. But do you think now that there is a chance for the new dawn of opportunity for the Panthers to actually start putting a run together? Or are they still at the foot of the NFL?
They don't have enough talent in that team right now.
Yeah.
And they traded away arguably one of their best players in Brian Burns. Yeah. And if you look at the nature of the deal, and similar to what they did last year, they don't seem to be getting the value back in the deals. Like, the Panthers fans have been taken back by giving away a second for Brian Burns, bearing in mind that the Rams were offering multiple ones about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, it's a very tricky situation. The terror for a franchise not so long ago was have made Super Bowls in the last 20 years.
They might have pleased the fans by coming back into the fourth round. It'll be interesting to see what they do now. But Roger needs to come and do the selection, I'd imagine, Conor. So most of us can call it a halt to what's been another entertaining evening.
Yeah, no, it really has. And, you know, again, you're waiting for the first dramatic twist. We got that with the Michael Penix move, as we were saying, when Atlanta dipped in and took a quarterback where nobody expected them to do so. And that kind of set the cat among the pigeons. And then we saw a couple of different directions taken from there, as, you know, we were keeping ourselves awake, wondering where Dallas Turner would finally fall to. That kept us amused for a while. Then there was a little run on edge rushers. Then the corners came back into vogue.
When Turner gets his number, we should have his name and number put on the back of these shirts.
This will always be the Dallas Turner draft for all who are here in the Clayton Hotel in Lapskey in Cork.
Here we go. The final selection of the first round. I'm looking forward to seeing who this is now.
Get the pajamas on now.
I left my Patriots pajamas at home.
McConkey.
Mitchell.
Oh, yeah. Leggett.
And David Leggett.
Xavier Leggett, Florida or South Carolina.
I had him down for the 49ers picking at 31, so I'm not totally surprised by that. I'm just surprised that the Bills trade out of a spot where they could have got the wide receiver they wanted.
I think
unless
And
they
possibly still can with the first pick in the next round.
I think it's appropriate that player is the one that's selected as the last pick because essentially
Leg it.
allows Connor to say, we're going to leg it now and wrap up tonight.
Stole my line. Local boy goes to South Carolina. It's a nice way, as Brian says, to draw a bow under the first round of the 2024 NFL draft. We've enjoyed bringing it to you, and thanks so much for those of you who stayed up with us through the night and engaged with us all the way. It's always great to get the messages in and to see people's instant takes to add to our own and to get that back and forth. That's what makes the whole show so much more entertaining and why we enjoy it so much more. So from Owen, from Sue, from Shane, from Noel, from Brian and myself, thanks so much for joining us on the Irish NFL show in association with our partners QuinnBet and the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. We are off to bed.